Lead us in the invocation.
Mr. Mayor, council members, it's my privilege to be able to invoke God's name for this meeting. Let's pray. Father God, I call upon you as the King over all creation and ask that you hear me now because of the perfect work of Jesus Christ, your Son. As your representative, I cry out to you on behalf of these city councilors and ask that you would be honored and praised in the work done here today. We thank you for these men and women and their service to Bonita Springs and all of her citizens. We're grateful to each one of them as individuals and for all the gifts that you have bestowed upon them. Lord, we thank you and ask that you would help us as they go about the business that you have set before us. Help us to not be presumptuous in the blessings of your grace, but rather to make us more and more grateful to you for all that you give us. Lord God, forgive us for the ways we've failed to serve our fellow man. I do now implore your aid and direction. Help each one of these to use what you've given them in ways that would be true to the role you've given them. Thank you for appointing them to represent the people of our beloved city. Protect them from both internal and external influences that would have them act in any way not conforming to your perfect character. Allow them to care for their fellow citizens with justice and truth. Give them wisdom, discernment, and skill in crafting and leading legislation and leading this city. Guard them against overreaching their power and help them to honor you in all that they do together as a council. Bless them and work through them, Holy Spirit, in accomplishing your will. For it's in the matchless name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Councilman Slacka, could you please lead us in a pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country?
It will be an honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilman McIntosh. Here. Councilwoman Martin.
Here.
Councilman Slachta.
Here.
Mayor Nelson.
Here.
Councilman Simmons.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Longcart.
Here.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Mayor.
All right, and we'll go right to public comment on agenda items. That's public comment on agenda items only. Anyone wishing to speak on one of the items here? Please come forward.
Fred Forbes, Bonita Springs resident. Really want to compliment the program that we had at the fire station. The work that Nicole and the Conservancy District was very interesting. It showed a lot of different possibilities that have to be further examined and we call it ground-proofed out, but there's a lot of good stuff there. As part of that, I want to also say that at least 5 of us agreed that we were working within what was originally presented by the majority of council as to what our marching orders were, and that I know that during the November and December when the Water Task Force was being formed up, as well as the moratorium, there was an attempt twice to modify the directions to the task force that we were to consider other things than what was in the original drafted ordinance. And we've stuck to what was passed because the other was not accepted by City Council. I think that we've done an awful lot. We've got processes going. I believe that you will get good recommendations. You may not all agree with each one of them, but I'm pleased to say that that's what we've been doing, and I think Scott's doing a great job as a chair. There was 5 of us that agreed that that's what we had done, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Thanks, Martha Simons, for the record. Yes, I want to congratulate the Water Strategy Task Force. They did a good job the other day, and I think they kind of ironed out the kinks about whether they could do recommendations for low-impact development or sustainability stuff that affects water. So I think they know what they're doing there. But I do think that the form that they've been using, where it says that they're going to tell you how much these projects are going to cost and how long they're going to take, it's unfeasible. I mean, look how long it's taken to get Oak Creek done. right, Mayor? I mean, we didn't know, how long it was going to take to get the money or how much it was going to cost to do the job. So really leave that to the professionals, like when you did your stormwater master plan with Integra, they were more capable of giving you an idea, an estimate of how much the water project. Certainly, we have great citizens serving on there, but they don't have the professional, qualifications to tell you how much a project's going to be. Next, a Royal Pond is an excellent opportunity. Please support it. There might be a couple of negatives there, but I think you can get through them. Most importantly, I want to say it might cost $7,000 to $10,000 to maintain this, but we're already paying about $2,000 to just mow along the strip there anyhow. Just think about how much it's cost to buy Bamboo Village at 3.1 or something, how much we have in it now, 3.5. Mayhood property cost us 2.1 million. That was million, that 3.1. And this isn't going to cost that. We're going to get a grant. We've already budgeted $100,000. It's going to make an incredible improvement, and there may be an opportunity for interconnectivity with this neighborhood to the Imperial River boat ramp over to US 41. So it's a real plus for the neighborhood, which is really not asked for much. Really, we haven't done much over there. But they've had a lot of negatives happen, and this is going to be a real positive for them. So thanks for supporting that, and have a great meeting.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time wishing to speak on any agenda item, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and proceed with the proclamations and presentations. And the first one, Kathy McGrath. Could you turn this up a little bit? I don't know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to someone in that general area over there. First of all, I have to say that there we go. Kathy and I have been friends for a long time. Our families have been friends for a long time. They've been long-time Venetians. She's always stayed active in the community. She's always been there when you need somebody to do something. I'm going to make her cry right now, so it's what I do best. And sorry, I'm sorry. And besides trying to make you laugh now while you're crying, that would be odd, wouldn't it? Sorry. And so anyway, I'm just going to talk because this isn't working. There you go. Anyway, Kathy, thank you so much for all that you do. I mean, this certificate of recognition is very nice, but it is woefully inadequate for what you do. You're always here, and you're always there to help. You always have that positive voice for us. I can't tell you how important that is and how good that feels to this council and myself to have somebody up there that's really positive for this community. And this is a certificate of recognition presented to you for just making a contribution to the Plant Tree program for $250 for a tree to be planted in the city of East Springs in memory of your good husband, Bob McGrath, also my good friend. But it goes beyond that. Thank you so much for everything. Everyone
Speaking
Go
of,
ahead. You can talk right
Hello?
Real
Hello?
close to it.
all right, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, I think that recognition should go to the Tree Advisory Committee and to the city for having this program. I have contributed to the Arbor Day Foundation for years. Bonita Springs is designated as a tree city. And you know, trees remove carbon dioxide and they put oxygen in that we breathe. They provide shade, they provide beauty, and they provide habitat for our little feathered friends. So look, this is in memory of Bob, but you can honor someone who's alive right now. I can think of one right now, Bob Gillette, bless his heart. But please join me in this. Put some more trees in Bonita. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. Great.
That was awesome.
Thank you. All right. This one doesn't work either. Good.
2 for 2.
Okay, and at this time, we're going to go ahead and ask the, or you just anyway.
Get Tina McNeese and-
Or something. This is going to be presented to the Barefoot Beach Chapter, National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution. Would you please come up here? Come on up. somewhere, right? In the Daughters of American Revolution, they do so much good work for the community, and like I was just teasing there, always giving presentations, always giving opportunities for the citizens to express their citizenship, their appreciation, their knowledge of the Constitution and everything that makes America great. So thank you for all that you do there. And this certificate of recognition is presented to the Barefoot Beach Chapter, National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution, for making a contribution to the Plant a Tree program for $250 as well, for a tree to be planted in the city of Bonita Springs to honor these members for their military and public service. And that's Major Kathy Reard from the Lee County Sheriff's Department, the Patrol Bureau Commander. Sarah Flora Ryan, First Lieutenant, U.S. Army. That's your niece. This is her right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, you representing her? She's in the field right now. And then also, let's see, in 1978 to 1990, and the U.S. diplomat retired. Lee Moody, private second class. Okay, I got it. Sharon Pfizer. Oh my goodness. Hi. Again. Sharon Pfizer, which is SFC. What does that stand for? See, I don't know that.
We do.
You gotta be up here.
We do.
So brilliant. 1978 to 1990, and also U.S. diplomat retired. There's the microphone. There it goes again. All right, let's try that. All right. Lee Moody, private second class, U.S. Army, 1981. And so here we go. Oh, I'm very much. Hi, Mary. And anyway, thank you so much for everything that you do and for recognizing these patriots amongst us. So thank you so much. Everybody, please give them a hand.
Well, we're sorry that Kathy Reard was sick. She was planning to come today. And we're sorry Lee Moody couldn't come because she's at work. And I'm very glad that Tina could be here to represent me. And glad that Sharon could be here too. And our chapter is very happy that we have our tree planted.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and I think Mary Ann Alexander, would you like to come on? There you go. And okay, come on up. I was about to say who's your friend, but
Turning, I'm sorry.
I know Martha's your friend, but
Yeah,
who's your other friend?
Which one? Hers? Okay. Here's the mayor.
It's not us. Oh, it's good to meet you too.
I'll be on this corner when you need something.
Arthur, here's an extra agenda.
Yellow lab. Okay, and this proclamation, and I'm going to read this. It'll take a while here. Whereas for 50 years, the white cane has been a significant tool for independence and a symbol of equal access and expanding opportunities for the blind and visually impaired persons. And whereas it is the policy of this city, and those challenged by vision loss shall have the same right as all persons to the full use of the streets, highways, sidewalks, public buildings, and facilities, and other places. And whereas those who are blind and visually impaired shall be entitled to full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges of all common carriers or modes of transportation, lodging, places of public accommodation, amusement or resort, or other places which the public is invited. And whereas every blind or visually impaired person shall have the right to make use of a white cane or guide dog in any of the places listed above. And whereas the primary problem with blindness is the public's lack of knowledge and misunderstanding regarding the abilities of blind persons. Now, therefore, I, Ben Nelson, Mayor of the City of Bonita Springs, do hereby proclaim the 15th day of October 2014 as White Cane Safety Day and have the support of the City of Bonita Springs for the full involvement of our blind and visually impaired citizens in the social and economic life of the city. And Mary Ann, thank you so much for accepting this.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Mayor Nelson and the council for this, and really for just joining us on this celebration and the commemoration. The white cane is a symbol of our independence and all we've accomplished. It's a battle of advocacy all the time, and to have this great city join us in the celebration is just an awesome thing, and we are truly honored. On behalf of the Southwest Florida Council of the Blind, thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you so much.
That's it.
Yes, sir. Okay, at this time, we have a presentation by Scott Duvall, the chairman of the Bonita Springs Citizens Watergy. Is that a word? Watergy?
It's a new word.
Water
It's a
Strategy Task Force. Thank you very much, Scott, for coming here today.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to serve on the Water Strategy Task Force. It's been entertaining and yeah. As Fred alluded to earlier, there was some, and there has been some discussions surrounding the scope of our task as the Water Strategy Task Force. So thank you, first of all, for allowing me the opportunity to give you kind of a status update, but also we're going to seek some clarification and input from council. As part of your packet, you were given the resolution that founded or formed the Water Strategy Task Force, and I think that's helpful to be reminded of what our objectives are. And so if you don't mind me just reading that real quickly. The Citizens Water Strategy Task Force will provide input to the City Council after gathering and reviewing information on water quality and quantity issues, examining flowways, floodways, aquifers, stormwater management, watershed management and maintenance, well field protection, septic tanks, and other water-related issues related to the DRGR and water management impacts to Bonita Springs. 2B, that's number 2, letter B. Sorry, not 2B. But the task force will present the mayor and city council with a strategy for a sustainable course of action to address these issues within the DRGR no later than December 15th, 2014. And 2C is why I'm here today. To accomplish these objectives, the task force will submit a periodic status and progress reports to city council as deemed appropriate by city council. So I'm here today to kind of give you an update as to where we've been, where we expect to go, and then I'm going to, again, seek your clarification on a couple items. I'll tell you, I didn't realize we had so much information about water in the city of Bonita Springs before I joined this task force. I have my folders in my car, and I think they way down the back end of my car a couple inches, but we've heard presentations from a number of professionals and stakeholders in the area. I'm just going to read a brief list. Phil Flood from South Florida Water Management District, Fred Parton from Bonita Springs Utilities, Kevin Irwin, a restoration ecologist, Matt Feeney from the City of Bonita Springs Public Works, Roger Kopp, who's a hydrologist, folks from the Lee County Department of Natural Resources, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Greg Rawl, Dave Loveland, the Director of Lee County Transportation, representatives from Bonita Grand Mine, Eric Livingston, Brenda Brooks from Crew, Andy Tilton from Johnson Engineering, Dr. Serge Thompson, Dr. Wynn Everham from FGCU, and Jim Beaver from South Florida Regional Planning Commission, among others. We've also reviewed and discussed a large number of studies and reports, most of which can be found online. The Northeast Quadrant Land Use Plan, which is also referred to as the Baracco Report, South Lee County Watershed Plan Update, the DHI Hydrological Study of the DRGR, the Bonita Springs Stormwater Master Plan Update, the Everglades West Coast Watershed Basin Management Action Plan, the Imperial River TMDL Report, the Bonita Springs Stormwater Master Plan Update 2, the Irwin Ecological Memo prepared for the Lee DRGR study, the 10-mile canal filter marsh, the 2005 RAW report, the Jefferson Lane Flowway Restoration Analysis, and more than 20 different maps of the area. So we've been busy. As Fred mentioned, this Monday we had a tabletop exercise seeking input on both the base map for the DRGR and a map that was prepared by the Conservancy and some stakeholders that they brought to the table to kind of guide discussions about certain projects within the DRGR area. The exercise kind of allowed the members of the public and the task force members to interact, kind of physically point to specific areas on the map, and then attach sticky notes with comments to the map for specific areas, so we could focus those comments in those areas. Over the course of the next few meetings, we're going to talk about what we've called the parking lot items. These are various items, whether it's policy or project items that we're going to discuss. We're going to refine those, come to an agreement on the language to be included as the final report. In relation to that, we've categorized those items into 4 different categories: water quality, water quantity, drinking water, and then miscellaneous. And then some of those items are going to be overlapped. There might be a topic that deals with a specific area that might appear in more than one category, but we feel that by doing that, you can focus your attention on the aspect of the project in relation to the category it's in. As Martha mentioned, we also planned to include some timing and financial aspect to those recommendations, and we think that's an important aspect because we want you to understand what the low-hanging fruit is, the things that are inexpensive or quick to be implemented. I agree, we're not experts. We're not going to be able to provide you a very accurate dollar figure. However, I think we could accomplish that in a few different ways, whether it's a range of, hey, this project will be less than $50,000, between $50,000 and $250,000, or above $250,000, things of that nature. Those things still have to be hashed out, but that's the plan. And we would like your input, by the way, on these proposed, how we plan to present to you. The things that we need clarification on, I read in the resolution that we're supposed to talk about the DRGR and water issues affecting Bonita Springs. There's been a lot of focus about the DRGR, but obviously there's a lot of policies. There are a lot of good ideas for projects that lie outside of the DRGR, and I think it's certainly within our purview to provide those to you and make suggestions. So I just kind of wanted clarification or affirmation of that. I also need to talk about Kevin Irwin and his contract, because he has provided, that was one of the questions Dr. McIntosh had. He has provided the 2 elements of his contract, the 2 deliverables, and he has sent a proposal for the third, or I guess a revised version of the remainder of his contract, being a water level monitoring aspect of his of a proposal that he submitted to the task force that we're going to discuss at our next meeting. So that may be included in the final report. I can't imagine we're going to have enough time to discuss that before the final report. Finally, I guess in regard to the rules of procedure, that's also in our the resolution that created the task force. The task force was intended to act in an informal manner, and so I guess we're asking for some direction in that. I know when some of you received the resolution that was passed at Monday's meeting, you questioned that about its efficacy and intent. So we'd love some clarification on that aspect of our rules of procedure. Finally, and this is more of a personal comment than a chairman of the task force comment, but I think it would be more beneficial to have the task force provide recommendations to the council in an apolitical fashion. I don't want the task force to be a political entity or political task force. And so I'm trying to build consensus. That's what I've been trying to do since I came on board the task force. And so I know there's a lot of comments about a 4-3 vote on a lot of issues. That's not my intention, which I made clear at our Monday meeting, that I would much prefer us to get as much consensus on these items as possible. And I think it might be beneficial to require that any proposal that we submit be approved by 5 out of the 7 members, or if 1 member is absent, by a 2/3 vote. I think that way it does away with a lot of the political portion of our task force, but it also would allow us to voice our opinion in an efficient and effective manner. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions or get clarification from you.
Well, first of all, Scott, thank you very much for serving. I know this particular subject has been difficult for a great many people, so I really appreciate you taking it on, and all the members of the task force taking it on here. I feel in some ways that it's something that we kind of shoveled off on somebody else to do. I feel bad about that, but I do thank you for all your service. So, Council, do you have any questions or for Scott? Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for that report. Appreciate it. Dr. McIntosh asked at the last council meeting about Kevin Irwin coming to speak to the council. Has anybody been informed about that? You've asked that, what, 2 or 3 times, I believe?
I have, but I spoke with John afterwards, and we talked about the efficacy of that. And I said if Scott came and made a presentation, that would be fine, and it is. I read the reports, and I think this is fine. Thank you for asking, though.
Okay. In terms of our deadline, is it December 14th?
December 15th.
Okay. Does it look like you might reach that goal?
I hope so. Our plan is to provide that final report onto your December 3rd meeting. And we'll be here December 3rd regardless of whether we have a final report or not, and I guess we'll address it at that time. But we do have, I think, 3 or 4 more meetings as a task force, and we are no longer listening to presentations, so we're now just hammering out those final recommendations.
Thank you, Scott.
You're quite welcome. And I'm sorry, I do want to add one more quick item. I can't speak highly enough about staff. Both John and John Dulmer, Matt Feeney are just super impressive, and Karen, just super impressive. So they've been a big help as well. So I'd be remiss
well,
without
thank you for
mentioning
recognizing them. That's not easy work for anyone. Anyone else have something else for? Yes, I'll go to Bill and I'll come back to you, Steve.
Scott, thank you for coming tonight, and I attended the meeting, and of course I just listened. I did not obviously make any words with anybody. When watching the meeting. And there was a motion made, and he got a second. It was Fred who made the motion, Fred Forbes. And then there was a discussion, and it seemed to me that the question was called 3 times, as I recollect the number. And I was hoping that it sounded like normally when someone calls the question here, when it's called, normally there's a vote. And it seemed to go on and go on and go on. And I thought it took away from the rest of the meeting, quite frankly. And I understand that there are different opinions and thoughts about everything. But I would hope that when anyone makes a motion and it's seconded and the discussion occurs, that it doesn't spread out into something that was rather lengthy with comments from staff and the rest of the board. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think I was trying to give everybody the opportunity to comment on that motion. So thank you.
More than fairly would probably. You're very kind.
Well, and I think that goes to part of why we're here. About our task force is supposed to be informal,
right.
And I think that was an unfortunate formality.
Yeah.
that is really unnecessary in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to interject about the call the question. What you're not supposed to do, though, is, and I don't know, I wasn't at the meeting, I know nothing about it. The chairman's job is to balance the need for people to express themselves. If they have new opinions and they have more information to bring that's not repetitive in nature, those voices are to be heard. And just because somebody doesn't want to hear any more talk about something, or they don't want to hear what other people have to say, or they're trying to stifle that, a lot of times they'll try to use the call to question to stifle any comment that is contrary. So I would say that it's got to be left up to whoever the chairperson is on any of these committees to balance that. And so that, that's like I said, I wasn't there, but if Scott, if that's what your attempt was to do, was to balance the rights of the minority and the majority right there, that's a good thing, is to hear those comments. It's better to do that than to not let people have their opportunities. So.
May I respond to that? There was no intention. I saw no stifling, because there was certainly a lot of openness because you allowed it to continue. There was no stifling that I saw. It was the interaction of everybody that was there. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes.
And I guess maybe on that note, this wasn't what I intended to say, but I guess you can also ignore calling the question if the question is not something you necessarily want to address, right? If you look at the flip side of that. So I hear the conversation continued and continued and continued, and we've all heard of government overreach. I hope there wasn't staff overreach during that discussion, because I've heard some discussion on that as well. So be that as it may, you had mentioned wanting to get a 5-2 majority to pass this. I would absolutely be opposed to that. 4-3, simple majority up here, that's what we do. So I would be more comfortable leaving it that way.
Right. And your elected officials were an appointed board. That's the point I was trying to make, is try to keep the politics out of it.
Right. Any other comments before?
Just real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead, Steve.
I was there,
Right.
and in Scott's defense, I think he's trying to understand what we've expected him to do and how he's expected to run that meeting. And there was an issue about whether the question was called and what was going on. But I still believe that Scott was trying to determine what it was that we expected that committee to, how we expected that committee to function. So if we can give you better clarity so the next time you don't end up in that spot, then we'll try to do that tonight.
Perfect.
Okay. Yep, Mike.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm open to receiving information about water quality outside the DRGR. That was one of the things you just asked about, as long as it pertains to the water quality. And the other thing is, I'd like to see it stay mainly water quality and not so much of development issues, unless it's more of what low impact development can be done along the lines of what's allowed out there, best practice type things. But otherwise, I'd like to see it stay more of the water quality and away from the what can be put out there.
All right. Just a couple of things. When it comes to requiring a supermajority, I agree. I don't really think that that's appropriate. I think that's a way what's the expression? The tyranny of the minority. It's a good way for one person to hold up the whole works to get exactly what they want. However, I do agree with you completely that each and every one of you, if you are a member of this task force or any commission, and your primary goal isn't to compromise and to find what's best and right for the entire whole and to take into consideration others, if your goal is to win, you should not be on there. You should not be on there. This isn't about that. This is about consensus building. That's what our jobs is. We're not here to be sure that our constituents just win at the cost of anything else. We're here to listen to voices and to find that even ground. And sometimes it makes nobody happy, and sometimes it makes some people happier than others. But that consensus building is an art. And I didn't say consensus gathering, you notice. It's consensus building. And I believe in that. That needs to be a part of it. So far as I'm concerned, whether that happens or not, that's going to be up to your committee.
I'm trying.
If people are entrenched, not a whole lot you can do about that on either side of this issue. So far as that has to do with the politics of the whole thing. So you are right. You are advisory to this committee. And so far as being an informal manner, that's going to be up to the character of that committee. You're going to have to conduct yourselves in a manner that is, commensurate with what the chairman and everybody's vision is. I don't think that this council is going to dictate exactly what exact rules you are, and if where they're overshadowing you, trying to tell you how to run your meetings. We gave you a charge, which was provide us with certain information. That's what we're going to expect, and periodically come back here and tell us how you're doing, which may be horrible, may be good. The one other thing that you asked about, or when it comes to, that I have to tell you, I was a little dismayed about when I kind of see the idea that so far as, okay, well, we're going to give you recommendations, but we're going to make them in a vacuum, so to speak, regardless of what fiscal ramifications it may have, regardless of what the realities of the situation, regardless of if it's even something that's possible, we're going to make those recommendations like that. I'm not going to want that brought back here. You should absolutely, in my opinion, take into consideration everything that has to do with that. And you know what? In my opinion, it says it right here. in B. It says task force will present the mayor and city council with a strategy for a sustainable course of action to address these issues within the DRGR no later than whatever. Now, that may include all kinds of things. It may include how can you do that without considering whether development is evil? And you may come back and say, you know what, there should be no development out there. That should be your recommendations. But you said development, so you considered that ramification. You may say that, you know what, we found that because of these other items here, you know what, the way that we can fiscally get there is to allow the same development that's happening there. We leave it alone exactly the way it is. And that we think that you should supplement that with another tax or whatever, just to get in the ballpark. That's what I expected from this. Why would we send you off on a mission to come back and say, hey, it's the DRGR and there's water out there and, you know, it needs cleaned up? Well, yeah, we know that. We already know that. I could have told you that before you left the building. So I'm speaking for myself, but that's my expectation, and I'm not trying to. We can choose as a council to we can completely ignore what you bring back. So there's no danger in you making a recommendation that, you know what, we think you should build 50-foot high skyscrapers and an airport out there. Not going to happen. You know, or you may come back and go, you know what, we believe it should remain the way it is, and council could go, yep, we agree, and off you go. So I think it needs to be part and parcel. There's nothing in here that precludes that. Nothing in this ordinance or resolution that formed this committee that precludes you from talking about anything. Now, so far as the connection between, hey, can we talk about other water quality issues? I would prefer that you keep your eye on the prize, which is figuring out the thing that we've been trying to do for the last 14 years, which is, you know what? If what you're talking about, the water quality effects, is a direct consequence of what's happening out there, I think it's connected, and you should. But if it's something that's not completely connected to what your goal is, I don't think you should go down some other rabbit hole. And which is, let's talk about what we can do in Hickory Bay. Let's talk about something over here. I think we need to concentrate, or I would prefer personally that you concentrate on the DRGR issue. What do we need to do about it? And if our goal isn't to figure out what the land use consequences are, I don't know what we're doing. Anyway,
Yep.
Anyone else?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have another quick comment here. I mean, you know, as long as we keep in mind, you know, it's summing it up here, but the goal out there, at least I remember the goal, is to get the water right first. Keep that in mind. Follow what we passed here, and follow Robert's Rules of Order. You know? That's how I see it.
Thank you. John?
And just a point of clarification, the green sheet, because there was some discussion at the meeting on Monday about the green sheet. The green sheet was not drafted by either the chair or members of the task force. It was written by me. That's why my name is on it. And I feel at least that I'm not doing my job as staff liaison if I don't, when it's necessary, bring back a request for some clarification from you folks. You established the task force in terms of helping them to get to their end goal, which is to produce some recommendations that you can actually look at and work with. And that's why I added that. We've got approximately 50 draft recommendations. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all individual. A lot of them, as Scott mentioned in his presentation, there's a lot of overlap. You might get something that has to do with the Jefferson flowway that shows up as a water quality, may also show up as a water quantity, flooding type issue. So there's a lot of overlap there. But what was disturbing to me as a staff member is that I had an apparent, I don't want to call it confusion, but lack of consensus by some of the task members as to whether or not the scope of the particular recommendation was within their world that they could deal with. So some of the task force members might say, I'd like to make a recommendation along these lines. Other task force members said, I think that's beyond what we've been tasked to do. I don't know. I mean, I only know what I remember and what I've experienced, and I don't myself remember any limitations placed on the task force other than what's in their enabling ordinance. So, for example, let me give you a real-life example. One of the draft recommendations, again, these haven't been finalized, so don't assume that this is one that you'll get, but you may. One of the recommendations that we've been talking about was a prohibition on golf courses in the DRGR. Obviously, golf courses, by their very nature, have something to do with water and water quality issues. We all know that there's been some issues associated with that. So that's one of the recommendations that may come forward. That is, strictly speaking, a land use decision. And that would be a policy that has to do with land use, which, according to at least some of the task force members, may be beyond their scope. However, they have indicated they would like to be able to make that recommendation. And that's why I was putting this in, to use this opportunity to see if, in fact, there are any limitations other than what's in the enabling ordinance. If there are, let's talk about them. If not, if what I've heard, I think, from Peter is that follow what we said. And I think those are 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C, I forget.
A, B, and C.
And I think we're all on the same page then. So unless I'm missing something, I haven't heard articulated any hard and fast, don't go there type things. And as the mayor indicated, once the recommendations do come to you, obviously you're free to do then whatever you think is appropriate with them.
Well, and I think, council, stop me if I'm wrong, as you will. I know you will. but if they bring back something, and we will be quick to tell them, hey, we did not tell you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so you know what? Just set that aside. We're not interested in that. That's an easy thing to do. Now I would think that the only time that we probably would want staff to come back again or to interject, because instead of individual members coming back, a staff member has to be that liaison, is if they start going down a really long, complicated path towards something that it's like everybody feels like, are we supposed to be talking about, buying a piece of property in North Fort Myers, or whatever it might be. Then, yeah, we would want to know before they went too far in hiring somebody or something like that. But if it's a pretty broad gesture here to figure out, what's best for that area when it comes to water quality. And you know what? If the consensus, and I would even say the broad consensus, the narrow consensus, it doesn't matter to me. If there's sufficient comment and sufficient debate and sufficient evidence to support a conclusion that golf courses shouldn't be built out there, bring it to us. I'm not afraid of that, because as long as you bring the data along with it, I want to see it. I mean, council, is that right?
Can I say something, Ben?
Yes, please.
The point is that the resolution is very clear, especially A, which I refer to, and I know you're going to do that. When that is taken care of in any way, shape, or form, then we can look at the other things that were mentioned in your green sheet, John. I think the most important thing is for you to follow the resolution, and when you come back with a recommendation, as Ben just said, golf courses, whatever, that's fine. But follow the resolution that was before you to stay on the water items, because then we can find out where it's gone, how we're going to fix it, how we're going to widen it, how we're going to roll it, whatever we're going to do. And then we can talk about anything else. I'm open to discussions about anything as long as it works. If it won't work, I obviously won't support it. But you're doing a great job, and I'm not criticizing the committee at all. I just felt that the circumstances in the green sheet personally was not part of this, and I've talked to everybody about it, and I'll stop. And thank you, Ben.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, just to clarify, so they should not be precluded from discussing land use development in general. I know that they're not going to make specific recommendations. That would be kind of crazy. But if they would like to go ahead and say, look, there's some certain things that shouldn't happen out there, and there's some certain things that shouldn't. So there isn't this, council, I think that they're going to want to know this answer. There isn't a prohibition about talking about land use in general, as long as it pertains to water quality and the issues that they're supposed to solve.
Correct.
Sounds right.
And that strategy.
Correct.
Is that right?
That's the way we're looking.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Is that overreaching what's in here?
no, I think it's directly to the point. Is what the way I feel about it. And you know what? I'm not precluding that what you bring back maybe nothing is satisfactory out there. Fine. I mean, so that's a land use decision, isn't it? If you know what, we found that the water, we're going to ask you to do this, this, and this, and this, and in order to do that, you're going to have to do away with certain uses. Okay, that's a land use decision. Yep, Audrey.
I just want to raise two issues, and the first is the fact that while Robert's Rules is to be used, it is to be used to effectuate communications. It's not to be used as a sword to actually cut people from communications, and that's in Robert's Rules of Order. So I want to make clear that sometimes when you have that call to order, if it is to stop people from communicating, I also want to point out that during the course of the communication, my name was brought up several times to the point that I did feel I had to communicate my opinion. I know that that distressed some people, that staff was overreaching, but when my name is used to back me up, this is it, back me up, this is it, back me up, after a few times, I will say, this is my recollection. And then I finally want to point out any of the resolutions at the Water Strategy Task Force, it was not brought up to staff ahead of time. We weren't able to review there were two of them, one passed, one failed for a second. We were unable to review them ahead of time. I would ask for the courtesy, just as council does it, to allow staff the ability to review things if the Water Strategy Task Force feels compelled to adopt resolutions that either try to reinterpret the city council resolution or just have it where they don't do resolutions, because quite frankly, again, on this particular issue, prior to this discussion of resolutions, the Water Strategy Task Force had a very fruitful conversation of things that they would put in what they call the parking lot. Ideas for recommendations that when they come to vote, they'll actually vote on. And one of them was discussion of Amendment 1, which is where they can provide financing and funding. Well, the resolution as written, if you're to say you're not to look at financial, does that mean you're not to look at the willing seller program, create a willing seller program? Does that mean you're not to be looking at this information and using Kurt Clausen, which was part of the motion or part of the thing that was added to the parking lot during the course of the meeting? And then the same person who made the resolution that said we're not to look at financial. So in 1 minute there was financial discussion, the next minute there isn't. So I would request, and I realize that it did disturb that I did communicate, but when my name is used, I will sometimes have to say, this is my recollection.
I think that's understood. Anybody in same circumstances would react like, I have a suggestion for you. Let's not call this a parking lot. It's probably not a good idea. How about a retention area?
Retention area?
Right?
There you go.
You think so?
Should it be a detention area, because they are different? I have learned they are different.
And council, here's another suggestion, a suggestion for you. I think that it's the reason that council does this, and it's out of courtesy, not just to your fellow people that you're working with, that you work closely with. And you know what, you if you're not working towards being friends, you should be. I know you should be, because you're working on the same team. All right? You were charged by the community to gather a consensus on there, to bring us back something. You may not agree at the end, but that's okay. But at least if you work towards that and you're considerate of each other, that's what has to happen. And part of that consideration is that don't bring something in and go, you know what, I think we should do this, and just pop it on everybody and go, I think we should make, billy goat farms illegal. I got a second right over there. And it's like, well, then you didn't notify all the billy goat farmers in town. This is a horrible analogy. But you see what I mean. We don't do that as council. What we can suggest and what we do say is, you know what, next meeting, I want the council to consider doing away with this certain use, or I consider passing it. And then the council, is that okay with you? Yes. And then that way it's advertised, the public can comment, staff can be prepared, they can bring you back information about, yeah, you can't do that. There's a state prohibition against, billy goat farmers lobbied hard for that. Can't do it. There's valuable information. So I would suggest, I know that sometimes that can't be prevented. I would suggest that you do that you respect each other and do that.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think every meeting has been cordial, even if we disagree with one another.
Good.
I think Monday was an unfortunate, odd day.
All right.
So.
Well, good. Does it, yes.
Yeah, and I just want to make a comment, if I may. I mean, you know, I've always said I'm a good master of the obvious, but obviously we're concerned about the DRGR in Bonita Springs. However, this water flows all over the state. So I just would say, let's keep that in mind. The water is going to get where it's going to get, whether it's in Bonita Springs or whether it's in Estero or North Naples or Kissimmee. So I would just ask everybody on that task force to keep that in mind as well.
It is, yep.
Okay. And yeah, Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to clarify, when I said look outside of the DRGR, it was pertaining to water situations in the DRGR.
Good.
You know, something that can be done outside to help that situation. That's what I meant by look outside the DRGR.
Sure, sure.
Well done. That's important. Okay.
And just comments on the format too, so if you get a chance.
So the format.
If you're okay, if you're comfortable with the format that we're going to present these items.
The
That
format
was
being,
attached.
The format being just a one-page template for each of the items that does get boiled down to an actual recommendation, and it would either be in the form of a project or a policy that they would want you to adopt in either of the categories of flooding, water quality, drinking water, water supply, that is, or some of those other items that we've touched on. If you're okay with that kind of scenario, and that may change, but that's kind of how they've been at least categorizing these things as they store them in the
retention area,
not the parking lot.
Works, doesn't it?
Okay. So that may still change, but basically, I mean, they want to be able to give you a product that you can clearly and quickly identify as, okay, this will help this, and to the best extent possible, and we recognize that none of us are experts, so I want to qualify that, to the best extent possible, they're going to try to identify a responsible party, an approximate timetable for accomplishment, and approximate cost. And again, that's generally speaking, just so you can kind of get an overview of, you know what, this one might be quick and fast and cheap, and we have the right partners. This one's going to take a lot more money and a lot more cooperation and a lot more time. So again, not to lock you into, obviously, we're not going to be able to tell you this is going to cost you $345,000, but just to give you a range, responsible party, approximate timetable, to give you a high-level overview of these things. So you have something that you can kind of work with. Does that kind of make sense?
I personally, counsel, I want to see what you feel about it. I have no problem with that at all, because, I mean, if you give a range and staff has input in it and the public has input in it, the public may come in and say, I've heard otherwise. And then the council may say, well, you know what? We like that idea, but it sounds really expensive. Let's do a little more research into it. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of what you're going to bring back here. I'm just not.
Good.
So, because you know what we've done in the past? Nothing. So how can I be afraid of what you bring back here? And I would remind everybody this, and of course a lot of you are going to just disagree vehemently, but the DRGR, what we do there, this is not the end of the world as we know it. So I think we just need to kind of take a deep breath as a community. It's not. If we do nothing out there, guess what it's going to do? Stay the way it is, or maybe degrade a little bit this way or that way. You know what? We just need to take it slow and don't politicize. Stop. I won't say don't. Stop politicizing this. Stop using this as a hammer to beat the heck out of people. It's not. It's a piece of property that we're trying to decide something clever to do with. It's important. Fine. But let's be nice. Come on. All right? All right? And anybody else have anything else to add? Bill.
I take exception with the political. There is nothing political as far as I'm concerned. My only goal.
Bill, microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. See that I like to sit back and relax. My only goal is to do as much as we can to utilize the space out there in the best way possible for the majority of the people that live in this city. If it in fact brings in other things after the water and where it's going to go and so forth, that's a different discussion to have. But I am not personally. The word political always causes friction, and friction causes fire, and we don't need that. We need to be more sensible about it and not bring up the politicizing. Everybody has an opinion, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, regardless of persuasion.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. It's just an admonition because it has been 14 years. Okay, anything else?
Yes,
Yes.
I would like to echo Bill's word. My appointee, Nicole Johnson, we sit and we talk, and every single time I've said, you know, the main thing, we got to get the water right. That's all I care about. We're not worried about development. If that's comes to that's a recommendation. But the most important thing is, I said, build consensus. We don't want politics involved in this thing, and that's clearly understood.
Good, good. Okay, did we miss anything so far as direction that you need? You okay?
Oh, we're good.
You all right? You got another question?
Not a question, but if you allow me, just one last comment, and that is, I just want to tip my hat to these guys. This is one of the hardest working volunteer groups I've ever been associated with.
That's right.
I just hope you appreciate it. They meet every other week. They took a little bit of a break from that schedule in the summertime, but that means they go to a meeting, the next week they get their packet, they're doing the packet for the next meeting. They are continually working on this. It's incredible. They really are doing a great job.
Well, I would leave you this. You want to this group wants to impress everybody? Come up with a consensus.
I agree.
You'll be known as
We're
miracle
trying.
workers.
I just have one.
More than that. Yes.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, you know, I know you're looking for direction, but I wouldn't be locked in, like John said, to any one format on how you present this. Talk through that and resolve that amongst yourselves in what format it comes back to.
Sure, sure.
But
No, I just
don't-
wanted to make sure you're comfortable with the direction we're heading, so that if you say, oh, no, don't do this, we want it to look completely different. We understand that now as opposed to 3 weeks from now. Or,
I'm just happy you're heading a direction. Okay, Council, you good? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, and for the whole group, thank you very much for the whole Water Strategy Task Force group, and I said it right that time, kind of. Thank you so much. All right, now we are, Council, we are to the consent agenda. Are there any items that you would wish to pull from that? Take a close look at them before you decide.
Motion to approve it.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Okay, and now we are to first reading and public hearing of the following zoning ordinance. And there is no public comment on this item because it's first reading.
That's correct. This is a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, considering amendments to the Imperial Bonita Plaza Commercial Plan Development, CPD, to allow for a 114-unit hotel motel, a 148-unit assisted senior housing facility, and approximately 10,000 square feet of miscellaneous office, retail, and service facilities on land located at 11761 through 11781 Seradrian Lane, Bonita Springs, Florida, providing for an effective date. This is a first reading. The second reading will be held during the City Council zoning hearing on Monday, October 13th, 9 a.m. in these chambers.
Okay, Council, what's your pleasure? Would you like to move this to the second reading?
Move.
A motion to approve to go to the second reading. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a second. Any other discussion?
No.
Mike?
Where exactly is this?
Yeah, I think you skipped.
The old Albertsons, next to Home Depot.
Okay.
Okay, good. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart? Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Okay, and now we have three ordinances here. Audrey?
Yes, and these are Land Development Code, so there is public hearing at this time. The first ordinance is an amendment to Bonita Springs Land Development Code, amending and replacing the sign ordinance, Chapter 6 of the City of Bonita Springs Land Development Code, amending the following sections. 6-1, purpose and intent of chapter 6-2, definitions and rules of construction. 6-5, prohibited signs. 6-6, permitted signs. 6-37, variances and special exceptions. 6-38, permits. Inspections. 6-39, nonconforming signs. 6-40, sign setback options. 6-69, measurement of sign area. 6-70, measurement of sign height. 6-72, construction standards, landscaping. 6-73, sign and street identification and marking. 6-111, temporary signs. 6-112, permanent signs in residential areas. Section 6-113, permanent signs in commercial and industrial areas. Section 6-154, interstate highway, interchange area signs. Section 6-115, permanent signs in the Bonita Beach Road corridor. Section 6-116, permanent signs on Old US 41 from Bonita Beach Road to Rosemary Street. And Section 6-148, billboards, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and effective date. I have reviewed the affidavit of publication, which is on file with the city clerk, and it is legally sufficient. The ordinance is scheduled for its second reading on October 15th at 2014. At this time, prior to, Jay Sweet will provide a presentation, but before he does, I just want to point out a few things in this ordinance. I have taken it, first of all, the city is working with Florida League of Cities on a sign issue, and council suggested a few sections in this ordinance to make changes, and I have made those changes in here. So that goes to, there's what we call a substitute, because there are phrases that can be considered content, and when there's anything related to content or an argument of content, there's an argument, then it would go to strict scrutiny. We have clauses in there to be more defined, more precise as to severability, more precise as to what's called a substitution of message, meaning we're looking at the time, place, manner, the physical nature of the sign and not any content in the sign, and a provision that residential signs may also be permitted with any message, so that it's very clear if somebody has that message that, you know, and it's on a sign that is similar to a real estate sign, they may put that up. And this is just to keep the sign in line with case law that has come out, as well as to strengthen the sign code. I also want to point out that staff has talked with Scott Hertz, who represents Carter Outdoor, along with Brian Satfield, who represents McDonald's. And there are some proposed changes. I'll let John Dulmer either, or we can discuss it. Scott sent me an email. It is, I'm trying to find my email, and I apologize. There we go. I feel better now. I can find the language. It's amending a sentence in 6-148 more so that it reads better and reads clearer as to the existing billboards being treated as legal structures. We use the term conforming, and we took that out so that the city will allow the signs to be replaced and reconstructed. So it's very clear that billboards will probably stay at a status quo. In other words, you probably will not get rid of billboards very often because of the replacement language, but it makes it, I think, more safer in the comfort zone for them as they feel towards that. And that's the billboard language. As to discussion with McDonald's, staff agreed that we probably need to change the menu board language to be very clear, where McDonald's has 2 lanes, and you can see that at the Interstate McDonald's. You don't, the one here locally doesn't have it. Menu board said there's 2 per traveling lane as opposed to just the lane. There's also discussion on background color, but I'll let Jeff Satfield discuss that issue with you. And I think those are the only 2 issues, and there's the repair and refurbishment. Again, staff has a position on that different than Mr. Satfield. Jay, if you'll provide the presentation, and we can discuss further after public comment.
Thank you, Audrey. Appreciate that summary. I just want to publicly say, first off, that staff has worked very hard on this ordinance, working under the general direction from council that your expectations of the aesthetics in the city be raised, whether it be through landscaping, architectural changes. An example of that is the large-scale retail that we'll be dealing with next. And also signs are a part of that. And so staff has taken that on in a serious way. We understand that signs are extremely sensitive to our business people, and we are trying to be sensitive to that. And so we have met with those people who have had concerns. We've worked diligently, staff has worked diligently to try to come up with a product that reaches a delicate balance between what the council is looking for and also being sensitive to the needs of our business people. We have not reached agreement, frankly, on everything, either on this ordinance or the next one, but I do want to assure you that we are certainly working in that vein to get there. I also want to say publicly that we are not in a rush to have this adopted by council. There is time. We're not going to pass it. You're not going to pass it tonight. It's only a first read. And yes, it's scheduled for a second and final adoption on October 15th. But as we've indicated previously, if we need more time, if the council needs more time, if our business people need more time, we are absolutely fine with that to continue to work on this to a continued date certain beyond the 15th, if that's the council's direction. So I want to thank Jay and his team for their efforts, and at this point, I'll let Jay take it away.
Good evening. For the record, Jay Sweet with Community Development. I think the best way to approach this is to sort of give an overview of everything that's happened and highlight the changes, and then as needed, we can go through the ordinance if we feel appropriate, page by page. And of course, it's not going to work for me. Okay, just a little background. As part of the uses on New 41, when we started to evaluate those and create the overlay, which is one of the ordinances that's coming forward, we talked about signs as part of that issue. And so we have met with sign companies, we have met with the chamber, we have done a lot of outreach to gather more information, to see people's concerns, and we've made quite a few changes based on that. And even tonight, based on the comments we have from McDonald's, there's a couple items that we think that make sense, and that's a good idea to go ahead and make some minor modifications. And so I wanted to just go forward with that. Changes we've made, definitions. Obviously, we had to add a lot of definitions in order to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, that we're on the same page. Prohibited signs, we've clarified what's non-conforming and what's prohibited. We've cleaned up a lot of problems in the code. As a matter of fact, this code's probably 12 or 15 pages smaller than the existing code, even though we're adding a lot of things to it, because what we've done is we've gone through the code and said, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff in here that doesn't make sense anymore. It's from a code that was written 30 years ago originally, and a lot of that stuff just doesn't apply, and let's get rid of it, and we've done that. We've struck many, many pages of text. We do address non-conforming standards, and one of the issues as we get to that, what we did, everybody thinks that we've changed the non-conforming standards in the code. What we did is we said, you know what, we should have one standard for the city, not one standard in this area, one standard in this area. And so we chose the standard that was in the Bonita Beach overlay for signs when they became non-conforming. And the language we have in here for non-conforming signs is exactly that verbatim. Only thing we did was delete the other definitions of non-conforming for clarity and for ease of enforcement. We do talk about flagpoles simply because the code was silent on it, and there are several things that we've done, as Attorney Vance said, where we have taken and made sure that we didn't create new problems, and we also made sure that we, even though we haven't had a problem, based upon what the law has been doing, that we want to make sure we don't create a problem. We go ahead and fix it now before it becomes an issue. We talk about temporary signs, and then we get into the big things, which is placemaking. One of the things when we looked at the sign code was, what's the purpose of a sign? And you ask that question, you're going to get about 50 different answers of what they think the purpose of a sign is. But in reality, it's to attract people to a location. And so the best way to do this is through placemaking. I think all of us, and I've told this so many times, when I was growing up, my father worked in the Harvey building. I have no idea what the address was, but there was 50 different businesses in the Harvey building because everybody knew it was the Harvey building. And if you didn't work in the Harvey building, you worked in the building next to the Harvey building. And that was a placemaking situation. And what we want to do is we want to encourage placemaking. We want to encourage that people say, oh, I'm in this shopping center, or I'm here, and let it be a destination rather than have a sign that has a menu of 20 different businesses that you can't read at 45 miles an hour anyway. And so that is, think of that as we go through this, that the intent here is to create a sense of place for the community. We talk about our wall-mounted signs, menu boards, and then we do address the interchange. The most controversial thing we've talked about in the sign code is color. And the reason I handed you out some of these colors is that sometimes when you put on a projector, they don't always jive right. And what's proposed is that your main sign would be limited to one primary color, and that primary and secondary colors could not be used as background. So you couldn't have a bright orange background with black letters on it, because we want to create a sense of place as we do this. Realizing that when you do that, you need to define what primary is, and you need to define how you achieve it. And within the ordinance, we talk about, and there's color calculators on the web. You go in and you click on a primary color, and we say, based upon hue value, as soon as you're 15 degrees one way or the other off that primary color, you're no longer a primary color. And I think it's important to recognize that that blue is a primary color blue. You would be allowed to have that as one of your colors. But you can make it a shade different, 15 degrees, and all of a sudden it's no longer a primary color according to the ordinance. So just because you can't have the brightest blue, the brightest red, both, you get one, and you get colors that are very close, but again, keeping it muted and keeping the atmosphere that you're looking for. The same way with the oranges, the reds, and one of the reasons I printed out is the red doesn't show up for some reason right on the projector. One of the colors I want to talk about specifically is yellow. Because everybody says, oh, McDonald's can't have their golden arches. Well, actually, they can, because a 15-degree variant on yellow, on pure yellow, is gold. And so actually, they can have both colors of their sign within their sign because of that option. So the whole idea of color here, I don't think is as it's been played out to be. Yes, it has a restriction, and yes, you want to create a certain decorum. I will tell you that as we looked at sign codes throughout the country, there are a lot of places that have strictly bronze and gold letters. That's all you can have. There are signs, some places only allow pastels, okay? So I think we have chosen a moderate position where it gives them the opportunity to have their sign. The other thing is within the language, we have put a provision that if they have a registered logo, either by the state of Florida or federally, that 20% of their sign can be that registered logo regardless of color. Okay, so we're not trying to prohibit anybody from having their brand or their logo. On the other hand, we want to make sure that our brand and the quality community we want is adhered to also. And as we looked at things, we felt that was appropriate to do. So what does this really mean as we go forward? Place-making signs, a couple things. Height. Currently, on 41, for instance, you can have a 24-foot tall sign. The square footage is based upon what size your lot is, and you can have as many little panels as you want. We cannot regulate how many panels because that gets into the whole issue of regulating content. Okay? So what we did is we said, you know what, let's take a look and see what works here. One of the things that has been a problem over the last few years, and I know that most of you are aware of this, is that they plant trees that are 12 feet tall when they plant them. They put a sign up that's 24 feet. That's 15 feet back from the right-of-way. The trees grow, and also they want to cut the trees down because they can't see their sign. Why don't we prevent that from happening? Our thoughts are quite simple. An 8-foot-high sign based upon the edge of the road, and you will hear McDonald's say it should be from the center line of the road, and actually that's not a bad idea. So, but establish where you measure the height from, so that when there's a swell there, you're not measuring from the swell. They get the height they need for traffic to see. Allow them to bring the sign to the right-of-way line, so that the sign sets in front of the vegetation. And so that when they come with their landscape plan, they can actually use the landscaping to attract the eye to the sign and use the landscaping as part of their signage process. And that way they get a benefit, a added benefit from landscaping in order to attract people to it. One of the reasons for limiting the size is that when you limit the size, decisions have to be made, and that is when you make a placemaking sign, who do you put out there? Not 20 or 30 or 40 little 2-foot signs, but is it the public shopping center? Is it the Prado Shopping Center? Is it Steinmart? Is it the Promenade? And we have actually a lot of good examples within the community that meet the criteria that we've come up with. But the thing is create that sense of place. And actually, what happens if you do that, all of a sudden all the businesses in size start advertising, I'm in the Prado, because everybody knows where that is. Not, well, here's my address on 41, and then you got to go by and you can't find their sign because it's a 1-foot by 2-foot sign placard on a 24-foot tall structure. This is an example of this and not that. We're looking for a placemaking sign, so you know your destination. That sign, again, not to pick on anybody, but at 45 or 55, or sometimes those people drive 65 on 41, can they really read that sign? And what happens when somebody can't, what they slow down and everybody else is going around them or causing other issues. And so it really is a safety issue to create a sign that is recognizable and tells you you've reached your destination. Again, and then what happens is when a center has a problem, the center actually, I think, hurts itself by having all these blank, because who wants to be in a center instead? If that center simply said, this is the destination, this is Miller's Landing, people would then pull in there to find out what is in there versus assuming that it's a dead center because most of the sign is blank. Question has always come up, and these are in Hilton Head. Questions are always coming up, well, I have to have that color. And the fact is that all throughout the country, there are Walmarts that have white letters on earth tone backgrounds. There are McDonald's that have a white arch on a gray background. And these are signs that we simply Googled and found signs, examples of where they are and how they exist. Throughout the country, it depends upon the city. And at the risk of being misunderstood, the thing is this. Businesses come where people are. Why do people want to be here? And is it the sense of place, and is it the sense of community that we've been able to create in the city of Bonita? I think it is. And so do you want to make sure that you continue that sense of place with the beaches, with everything we have? Because that's really what draws people, and people, of course, is why these businesses all want to be here. Now, the reason I put this one in here, Homewood Suites and SunTrust. You can't tell it from that picture. The SunTrust sign, based on measuring the edge of the road, is about a foot too high. If it's at the center of the road, it's about the right height. But that Homewood Suites sign, we went out and took a stick and measured it, and guess what? Within 2 or 3 inches, it falls within the criteria we've established. Now, that sign is 15 feet back from the right-of-way. How much more effective is that sign if that sign is pushed up towards the right-of-way for visibility for the cars to see? So I think that in all, where we're headed is definitely in the right direction, that it gives the opportunity to attract more business, let the signage be out there. But part of the thing is to make sure that we understand that when we're measuring the height of that sign, we're not measuring from the ground where that sign sets. Because oftentimes that ground slopes away from the road and it's got drainage or other issues. The height needs to be measured either from the edge of the road or the center line of the road. Good arguments for both such good arguments for both, I don't think it matters. I think either one works. And then with that, you can see that sign and you get the idea of how the signage works. Now, one of the things everybody's complaining, you're taking away all these signs from us. I got this big sign, you're taking it away. And we realize that. And one of the things that we've done is recommended a 50% increase on the size of the sign you're allowed to have on your building. Because what we want is that when you arrive at that place, that we've created this sense of place, and you arrive there and you pull off that road, you can see where you're going. So instead of a smaller sign in the center, you get a bigger sign on the building so that people can readily identify you and get to your location within the building. So the idea is here is, yes, we are making a smaller sign. A lot of people aren't going to have their little placard out there on the road because the shopping center people will decide how to best use the sign real estate. And at the same point in time, though, we want to make sure that as soon as someone pulls into that place, the sign of where they're going is readily visible and available. Some of the other things that we have added, and this is again an example of this and not that, for on the building, we obviously, and this is this is a bad picture because the sunlight got it so shadowed. That's it looks a little strange. But you know, the point here is that one of the things that we have already in the code, understand already in Chapter 3, there is a provision for a unified sign code within a shopping center. The shopping center themselves develop of how it's supposed to be. And we would expect, not even expect it is a requirement already, we would be enforcing that the shopping center would come in and they would do their unified sign code so that everybody as they come in knows what they're getting and where the sign's allowed to be. Now, a couple things to continue along that. One of the things that we don't have a standard of is a menu board type sign. And in a large shopping center, there are times when it is appropriate to allow somebody, you're driving in, I need to go this way to go to Buffalo Wings, I need to go this way, to go to the credit union, some directional signs within the center so that people know and understand at that point in time they're driving 5-6 miles an hour. And so a smaller sign with direction makes a lot of sense. So we don't specifically address that right now. This will address it. One of the other things that our code bans is the A-frame signs. And there are people who have them all over the place and are constantly, that's an issue. We feel that A-frame signs are appropriate with a set of criteria and conditions. There's a lot of businesses out there that have sidewalk cafes. Why shouldn't they have an A-frame sign with their daily special on it, as long as it's put in such a location that it doesn't interfere with the handicap accessibility of the sidewalks, that it doesn't cause traffic problems. And so we have a set of criteria by which A-frame signs would be allowed, and they would bring it in at night if they chose to go that route. The other question that had come up briefly, and not to steal McDonald's thunder, we feel that the way the code's written, we have the authority to give them a menu board sign for each of their lane. They said, yeah, you have, and we like that, but we think some additional language would be appropriate. We don't disagree with that. Clarity is always preferred. And so when someone comes up and says, hey, this is good, but it's not quite clear enough, we definitely want to make sure that we do that. And that's the basic overview of what we've done. Now, the last item, interchange. We noticed something peculiar in the interchange sign criteria as we were reviewing the ordinance. And it wasn't something that we were even thinking about, but we noticed that the taller you went up, the bigger your sign you were allowed to have. And we said, wait a second, this is a little backwards. And so we are recommending some changes there where the taller you go, the smaller the sign, the lower you go, the sign's more proportional. And so that is a change that we're recommending, that you don't get the biggest sign by going 100 feet. You get the biggest sign by being, say, at 50 feet, not 100, with variations as you go up. And but the current code allows the bigger sign. And so that is something that we are also proposing to be changed, to be reevaluated of how that is applied. I'm prepared to go through the code page by page if you want, or answer questions.
I don't believe we'll be doing that, but just guessing. But Councilor, you got any questions before we go to public comment? We'll go to Steve, and then we'll come down to Steve.
Jay, if you go down Bonita Beach Road in my district, you will see the Encore Bank and the Gatsby Pizza. Apparently, you're indicating that those signs are a public safety issue?
Not specifically. What happens, a lot of this has to do with road speed, how many lanes, and where you are on the road. I think on 41, some of those menu board signs are an issue for safety. I think as you go down Bonita Beach Road, the closer you get to the beach, just the nature of that traffic gets slower. And, it's not necessarily a problem to have different sign codes for different areas, but what we're trying to do is simplify it. But take Gatsby's Pizza, for instance, there. The owner of that shopping center could redo his sign and have a monument sign, move it closer to the road, and he could choose to let it be known as Gatsby's Plaza. He could choose to just let Gatsby's Pizza, or we're not regulating content. If he wants to put 2 or 3 names on there, that's fine. But by the nature of changing the style and size of the sign, what happens is that it makes the people who have the center rethink their advertising possibilities, rethink what this does. And as we've talked with Audrey, we can't regulate content. I can't tell them you can only have one business on the sign. I can't do that. That we would be in trouble if we tried to do that. So the question is, how do we accomplish what we're trying to accomplish in creating that sense of place? And after reading several sign codes and some sample sign codes and looking at different places around the country, it seems that the most appropriate is to create a monument sign of a certain size and restrict the copy area in such a way that you're leading them to where you want to be. It is important, though, that we allow the signs to go up to the right-of-way. And I know that's counterintuitive for everything you've been told over the years. Signs should be back 15 feet or 20 feet. But it's important because if you want that type of sign to create that sense of place, we need to make sure that that sign is out in front of the landscaping. The landscaping, isn't going to obscure it. We don't want to create another issue like we've had with trees and the tall signs. And I think that's a very important aspect of what we talked about.
Okay, so if they decide that they like the sign as is, they can have it that way?
The way that the ordinance is written is that let's assume that for some reason that sign is non-conforming. I'm not sure that sign is non-conforming. I think it's to a size that fits. But let's just say that it is. That it became a non-conforming sign. As long as they maintained it, as long as it wasn't destroyed to more than 25%, they can keep the sign. Okay? Nobody's saying, hey, the signs have got to be out of here tomorrow. And we chose, as a matter of fact, we chose the Bonita Beach corridor overlay, and so it's the same rules under which they've already been operating.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I have a few comments. Under 6-7, the parking of advertising vehicles, more and more businesses are doing fully wrapped vehicles. And according to this, if they parked right along the roadside in their parking lot, private property, that wouldn't be allowed. I understand the reasoning behind it. You don't want them buying a junk vehicle, wrapping it, sticking it there forever, then it's a sign, or putting a trailer there. But I think there needs to be some protection for somebody that's their normal vehicle. They drive it all the time, and they just they want to park it out there because they don't want to be in front of their business. you know, they want it out by the road, it does offer them some extra advertising, but it also frees up the parking spots closer to the building for customers.
I will say that from a practical standpoint, and you know, there are some things that I don't know how you enforce. And if someone's parked in a parking space, I don't know how this becomes an issue. On the other hand, I will tell you that we have situations on Bonita Beach Road where people take and park vehicles not in spaces, but parallel to the road, up past the bumper stops in an effort to get an advantage over their neighbor and block their neighbor's sign and so forth. And we have a battle with that. To that extent, I think you need something in there that addresses that. If somebody's parked in a normal parking spot, I don't know how, and I understand you're saying a lot of realtors Raptor cars, and they drive all day long around town, and technically, and even under the current code, technically it's not allowed, but I don't know how that you...
Well, could we put language in there saying that as long as they're in a parking spot,
sure,
they're fine? Okay.
And not on a curb.
Yeah, and
not
they
on a
need to
curb
be
or beyond
legally
a
in the
curb
parking
or
spot.
Right.
Well, and if I might add something too, my experience has shown also that there are times when these people aren't driving these vehicles around. They buy them for the express purpose of wrapping them or putting some advertisement on the side of them, and then even parking them in a parking spot close to the roadway. Those vehicles sometimes never move because that's not the one they drive around. They are using it as a billboard with wheels on it.
Well, and
So.
that's probably the worst case scenario. Somebody, their a vehicle, a car, a pickup, that's no big deal. But the real problem is when they have a big box truck, and they obviously specifically did it for the purpose of, you know what, I don't have a big enough sign, so I want to park my semi truck here with the gigantic sign on the side of it. And that, I think that's more the worry. And you got to admit, that's just not appropriate use. So I think it's a good idea. So far as, you know what, that's in your parking code, you're going to have parking spaces, and then you're going to have loading docks. The big truck belongs in a loading dock and those type of things, and the small cars, they can park in a parking place, right?
Yeah, as long as it's normal vehicle, normal smaller van. Yeah, that's like you said, not a big
what we would
delivery
call
truck.
passenger vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, and basically, I think in I may have it wrong. Either I think if you're 3/4 ton or above, you're not a passenger vehicle by the property maintenance code. So I think that if we label as passenger vehicles, that would be appropriate.
Well, a lot of florists use minivans, so I don't know if that goes
That's
over that
usually-
amount or not.
That's usually
but-
a passenger vehicle.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Anything else? What do you got?
Oh, yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm not going page by
No,
page,
go
but
ahead.
it's probably half
look
the
at those
pages. I
sticky
don't know.
tabs.
Those are signs, you know.
Yeah.
On page 23, I think it's 6-37, or no, 638, number 3, for bonds. The political signs were,
I'm putting that
Taking-
back in. I made a mistake.
okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't, you know, only the less than 4 square feet, but the larger ones still require a bond, and it's going to stay that way.
That's correct.
Okay. Next one on page 25. The identification numbers on there. It's going to have the permit number for any sign that is currently under the new ordinance. But it says that absence of the permit number shall be prima facie evidence that the sign is being operated in violation of this chapter. But what if it's a non-conforming sign? It's obviously not going to have that number, so.
Actually, a non-conforming sign should have a number, because non-conforming signs are signs that were conforming when the ordinance went into effect. So those would be signs that already had a permit that don't meet the current code. So they should also have a number. Even the non-conforming signs should have a number of the permit to allow the original installation.
And let me just point out that if you read the first part of the sentence, all signs and sign structures required to have a permit, because I think I had asked Jay the same question that you're asking right now. So there are some signs that are permitted that aren't, or
Don't require
that are
a permit.
allowable that don't require a permit, and those will not have to.
Okay.
A real estate sign, for instance, doesn't require a permit.
Okay, on page 26, it's got any structural repair or refurbishing of a sign that exceeds 25% of the value of the sign in its pre-existing state shall be the responsibility of But, well, basically, you can only repair it if it's up to the 25% value.
Correct.
But my problem with that is, say your sign, one side faces south, one side faces north. The south side, obviously, is going to be bleached out by the sun more often. You may need to replace that side. Now, if it's a non-conforming side, you're not going to be able to replace it. But you could just leave it that way, you know, looking horrible in perpetuity. So I'd like to see the 25% increased. The other issue with that is other places that had a development order when they went in, their sign, they're allowed to have that sign forever. It doesn't matter if it doesn't pertain to this ordinance or we pass another ordinance saying no signs whatsoever, they're allowed to have that sign forever. So why aren't the smaller businesses that aren't in, you know, they didn't have a development order when they went in, why are they being told that, you know, if their sign goes into disrepair, falls down, they can't put up a sign again?
Okay. A couple of things. I'm not sure that we're all on the same page, so I want to make sure we're on the same page. In a plan development, if they come in and they get a sign, unless they ask for a deviation, they got a sign based upon what the code is. If they want to change that, or even if the code changes, then they would still have to meet the requirements of the code. The difference is that I think in probably most of the plan developments, and I would say 99% of all the residential plan developments, if not 100%, it becomes a non-issue because we still allow them to put their signs on their project wall. And so, you know, we've tried to make sure that we're not, you know, getting rid of things just because it's an inch high or something, and we've left those provisions in there in the residential area. In the commercial area, I think that depending upon, it's almost a case by case we'd have to look at, many of those signs will have to eventually come into conformity.
Even if they had a development order, they'd have to?
Yeah.
Okay. But let's just say, for instance, Heaven Sent Florist, you know, they have a non-conforming sign. A drunk driver runs into their sign, knocks it down. They wouldn't be allowed to put up the same exact sign, even though it was no fault of their own. And now, you know, they have a nice, beautiful sign currently, but now they're going to be told you have to have a small monument ground-based sign.
Currently, and within the old 41 overlay, that's correct. If that sign was to get run over, you know, by a bus and knocked down, it would be destroyed and it would not be allowed to be reconstructed under the current code. So
not reconstructed in that way.
And actually,
a sign can be put back up. It just have to be the code.
It would have to be the code.
So they're suffering, even though it, you know, it was an act of God, if you will.
Hurricanes are the same way. So I mean, and as a matter of fact, some of the conversations we've had with people in the community is that if a hurricane comes through and knocks out my sign, I can't replace it, and that's correct, and that's the way it is in the current code already. We're not proposing any changes to that.
Now, the 25% number, that's in the code as well.
Right now, yeah, within the code currently, there are two sets of numbers. The 25%, which is in the Bonita Beach Road overlay, and then 50%. Ironically, though, the 50% does not allow for copy change. If you come in to change a non-conforming sign, you've got to bring it up to code. Within the Bonita Beach Road corridor, it's 25%, but it allows you to change the copy with up to 25%. So when you look at them, it's not an apple and a bigger apple. You know, it's an apple and an orange. The way that they are written are totally different. And our thoughts were that this one that says 50% is left over from the old Lee County Code. This one, it's the Bonita Beach overlay, is something that this council wrote as they created the overlay and seemed to have the most sense to it. And so we chose that as the standard.
And while Mike's talking about it, I'm going to go ahead and get back to you here. But when it comes to the old 41, the downtown redevelopment area, those sign rules will stay as is. Is that correct? So they're not part of what you're doing right here.
No.
Okay.
This
So
is
I just
everywhere
wanted to
but.
clarify that. Go ahead.
Yeah, but citywide,
Yeah.
it's
The rest
still-
of the
still-
rest of the city, yeah.
Yeah.
So your vested interest aside.
Yes. I would still,
I have
I
no
would
more
still like to
questions.
see 50%. Just because, same thing if you're on 41, one side of your sign's going to be facing south, the sun's going to be damaging it, the other side isn't. If I want to replace that one side, that 25% isn't going to allow me to do that because it's 25% of the value. Say it's a carved sign. So one side is basically going to be 50% of the value of my sign. So I would like to see that up to 50% just to be a little more fair to business owners that are trying to fix their signs.
And I understand what you're saying, Mike, but here's, and this is what you have to balance out right here. If your goal is a community that already has a bunch of other businesses existing, if your goal is to create a look and a feel for the community that is consistent and that someday the older businesses will blend in with the newer businesses and that you don't have these people having monument signs in the older places with a big pole sign in the air and this and that you want consistency, you have to create a methodology that will someday allow for that sign to be replaced. So if you make it to where it's really, really lenient, it's really easy to keep replacing that sign, no matter who's the tenant, no matter what typeface, no matter what color you change it, I can keep that sign. You never get conformity. You never get that look, that sense of place that you're looking for because they're always able to replace it, always able to replace it. And so that's I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but that's the reason that we make laws and regulations that do that. And then the same thing with building replacement, sign replacement, everything else. There's usually a regulation if you put it back, exactly the way it is and you only do a certain amount. So whether it's 50% or 25%, that's why it's like that. But anyway, I just wanted to add that
I'd
in
still like to see it 50%. I think it's a little more fair to the business owners. But moving on to...
let me,
Excuse
Carl
me
wanted
just
to
a minute.
interject something.
Sure.
Mike, go ahead.
Well, I'm really need some direction from council. We are getting a recommendation for a change here, and we need to know if council wants that change made or not.
Well,
Go ahead.
just out of curiosity, Mike, in your example, are we talking about 50% of the value of the sign? Because the value of the sign is probably greater than the painting, the resurfacing of the sign. So I'm not sure there's really 50% damage when it's sun damage if you're just going to repaint the sign.
Yeah, well, like say it's a carved wood sign and one side gets damaged, you may have to replace that whole wood carving. And in that case, it would be 50% of the value, because two sides.
All right, I thought your example was that it was faded.
Well, that was just one issue. But if it's faded, maybe the sun damaged that wood on that side and it needs to be replaced.
Well, let me ask you a question about that, and we'll dwell on this for a minute here so we can dispose of it one way or the other. The 25% value that you're mentioning here, is that commensurate with other communities? Is this something that you kind of made up, and oh yeah, we're going to be more strict than anybody else? Or
No, I mean, this,
yeah, you're not reinventing the wheel here.
not reinventing the wheel. This is actually straight out of the existing code.
Yeah.
So, there are so many ways that you can address this, from very simple to very complicated. And I can give you examples, if you like, of what's more complicated and that will bring everybody into conformity eventually. Or this is actually probably the best combination. And so when we read what had been written before and that the city had adopted, it made sense. And so we figured, why reinvent the wheel if we have something that makes sense, will fairly quickly bring people into conformity. If people are always out there maintaining their sign, they may never come into conformity. But for most people, within a period of, I would imagine 5 to 10 years, you're going to get everybody in conformity because of the nature of signs.
Right, and it is 25% of the value of the entire sign?
Correct.
It's 25% of the value. And that's per occurrence. So if I came in and I had a sign here and I wanted to come in, I could replace 25% of it, 25% of the value, and I could go away for a while and I could come back and do another 25%. How long before that period of time?
I believe, and I got to check it here, I believe it's within 12 months.
So it's not impossible.
It's within a 12-month period. And that's what I say, if somebody stays on top of their property and maintains it,
They don't have that problem.
They don't have that problem. And frankly, if you have a landowner that's staying that on top of their property, maintaining it, they've probably got a good-looking site that's okay.
But if it gets ran over, it's ran over, and you're going to put up a new sign, but you're going to put up a new sign that's commensurate with the rest of the signs that are in the area, the way it is. So council, I'll ask, Mike is suggesting that we change that from 25% to 50%. What did you?
Well, and I'm sorry, I just screwed this all up, I'll admit it. So anyway.
That's my job.
Sorry, Mayor. This will have a public hearing attached to it tonight. So anyway, bottom line is we do know that the representative from McDonald's may have some thoughts on this as well. And so maybe direction is not appropriate at this time. Just kind of wait till public hearing is over.
Okay,
So
I'm just
thank
fishing
you.
around here.
Sorry about that.
All right. Council, Mike has made a suggestion. Are you interested in entertaining that idea? Are you happy with the 25%?
25.
What?
And I can back that, I'd like to back it up if you want me to. Maybe it might help some other council members as to why I'd like to stick with the 25.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's, everyone knows this summer that I was on a over 3,300 mile road trip, and staff knows better than anything. I was taking pictures of signs everywhere that I went, and I was sending them back to them saying, look at this, look at this, look at this. And in a lot of those communities that have done this, the conformity, and to see a whole community that has embraced something like this, it's what defines a community. It's what makes it, I think, what we have for this vision. We're talking about landscaping and enhancing and setting ourselves apart, and these other communities have done it. And it's beautiful. It does make such a huge difference. So I'd like to see us continue to go, because I think this is the vision that a lot of people have, is to see us stand out as one of these outstanding communities.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 25% works. And what say you, sir?
I don't think it's about any specific piece of this sign ordinance or big box ordinance. I think it's about the quality of life that we're trying to promote in this city. And it's not about growth. It's about protecting what we have, the people who live here. And we are clearly in competition with other cities. We are clearly in competition with cities and evolving cities that don't have the history that we have and have the ability to be able to make themselves look different than we can. And I think it's important that we not get stuck on some smaller piece, even though it's important individually, I know, and lose track of the sight of the vision that we're trying to put into place in the city. So 25%, 50%, Mike, I don't care. You know, it's whatever works for the businesses. But from a larger viewpoint, I have to go with the staff who've taken a look at other cities and made a decision. So.
Okay. So, Pete, anybody else? Anybody else? Or you just want to keep carrying on and just pick this up at another time, or what do you want to do?
Well, I just want to ask for a little clarification. I mean, I get it, I hear it, but the 25 versus the 50, can you expound upon that?
Sure.
Well, 25 is half of 50.
Plus 25, I get that, but I mean,
Twice as much.
connect the dots for me, please.
There's several ways that you, under the 50% rule portion, that it was not the Bonita Beach Road overlay, it was very clear. Damaged, 50%, you got to bring it to conformity. It's also very clear that if it was a non-conforming sign, you weren't allowed to do a copy change. So under the 50% rule that's currently in the code, you can't change copy. Under the rules under both sections of the code currently, if a sign is blank for 6 months, you must bring it into conformity. So I want to make sure that we're all clear on that. On the Bonita Beach overlay portion, it was changed to 25%, but you were allowed to change copy, but only 25% of the copy within a 12-month period. And everything else was 25%. Basically, all the rest of the rules applied, which was if it's damaged, exceeds 25%. So, you know, and on one hand, the 50% rule that's currently in the code, if you want to go there and change copy, you're going to bring a lot more signs down a lot quicker. On the 25% rule, you're going to give people more time, but eventually everybody. So it's a balancing act. Both those provisions were in the code. And so, we looked at the one that we felt would accomplish the goal quicker, thinking that is, where we want to be. But the 50% rule that's currently in the code actually hurts worse in a lot of ways. Because if you have a non-conforming sign and you decide, I no longer want to be Target, I want to be Kmart, since they don't exist anymore, I can use their name, can't do it. Bring sign in conformity. And that's the way the code's written right now. So the 25% portion of the code seemed to strike a more fair balance for the smaller businesses than the 50% rule that was in the code. And I can tell you, we've got a couple signs right now that we have denied because of the 50% rule that are on 41, because that's what the language within the code says. So it is a balancing act. I think the 25%, it gets you where you want to be and gives them opportunities to maintain it. Like I said, there's other ways that we can go. We explored amortization schedules and all kinds of things that get complicated. They will affect 100% within a period of time, but they do get complicated and become enforcement issues. And so we settled on this thinking that since it was a known, it would be the easiest for everybody to understand.
Okay, Mike, why don't we go ahead and just move this along and just leave it as it is for now, because I can't get a strong consensus one way. I thought we could get a simple consensus, but let's just move on to some other things. Go ahead and carry on. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to cover that in the next 10 meetings.
On page 34.
Decision tonight.
Section. I'm not sure what section it's in, but it's the special occasion signs. It says no business may be permitted more than 2 special occasion permits a calendar year. I was under the impression that we were at 4 already.
You have adopted a resolution that allows additional for a period of time. The code was never amended. This is the language that's in the code currently. So yes, I don't remember if it was a resolution or ordinance that the council adopted that gave 2 additional, and I think it ends in
This year, March 15th?
March of this next year.
Okay, because I just feel that 2 special occasions isn't really enough, because it's only 15-day per special occasion. So I was more comfortable with the 4 number than the 2.
But to reiterate, 2 is what the code has been for quite a long time, and we've extended it to 4 because of the bad economy and stuff like that. Yeah, and so council can have the opportunity to extend that again if they so choose to.
Correct.
Right, but 2 is where it's at now.
2 is where it's at.
Yeah. But if we so chose, we could change the code to 4 if we wanted to. And then I guess now I'm getting into the colors. I'm not exactly sure why we're saying you can't have primary colors. Say I had a sign and I wanted to put the American flag on it. I've got the red and blue. Why wouldn't I be allowed to put, I mean, I know I can change the color a little bit, but why would I ever change the color of the American flag? What I don't understand is why are we saying yes to this color, no to this color, primary colors, secondary colors? Why no love for those?
I think it's a matter of.
I can sum it up. Guanamia. No, I'm just going to give you my perspective before he starts talking here. I think that's what this whole thing is about. You've hit the nail on the head. Why are we doing this at all?
But Guanamia is green. That's not a primary color.
No. Well, I mean, but why are we doing this at all? Why are we even talking about this? Because we want to get a community that is more consistent, that looks richer, that looks that has a particular look to it, that has a finer look, that's more consistent, that you don't have this constant race for who can be brighter, who can be more colorful, who can have the biggest chicken on their sign, who can be, not a chicken, but whatever, a cow, chicken, whatever. I mean, and that's what happens. And so what you become is you either become Las Vegas or this or that. I'm giving you a really worst case scenario. So then you have the other example, which is all the signs have to be beige with a white print. So you've got that other side of it. And I think that what they're proposing here, let's pick something in the middle there. Instead of having bright, garish, completely garish colors, tone it down a little bit. And that's it. Is that the reason?
Absolutely.
Well, in your example of Hilton Head, the McDonald's sign, if you're going 45 miles an hour down that road, it was white on like a light green. I may not have realized that was McDonald's, but had that been a red background with the yellow arches on it, I would have known that was McDonald's, no matter how fast I was going. So, I mean, to me, signs are there to grab people's attention. That's why businesses put them out there. They're out there working 24/7, 365 days a week. You know, they're there to attract your attention, say, oh, look, you know, let me go check out this business. If we make them all blend in, you might as well not even have a sign because you're not even going to see them.
Well, let's ask council, because council, do you want to tone the colors down in the signs a little bit?
Well, I'd like to hear from the public at some point about, I mean, the issues we're bringing up are very specific.
Okay,
to
well,
McDonald's
but
and so on, but
the only reason I'm trying to do this
I
is.
understand where you're going.
Okay.
But my point is, if you look at this, maybe it works. Maybe it solves Mike's problem and their problem at the same time. Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
So that's okay, but if Mike is asking for a specific change, we either have to say, we're not going to change anything about this right now until after public comment, and this is just a comment.
I'm fine with listening to public comment. We will have another meeting covering this, but I just want to throw out the problems that I have with it
Okay,
right now.
all right.
I appreciate that.
All right.
And then right below that, it's the issue of having the logo on there. Right now, it says that you can only have your logo 20% of that monument sign. I think it's in Naples. It's a Best Buy. They have a monument sign, but they have their logo takes up, you know, they don't have wording that says Best Buy and then their logo. It's just their logo. They've spent many years perfecting their logo. That's what everybody recognizes. So they have a big yellow hang tag that says Best Buy on it, and that's what's on their monument sign.
Okay, if I need to change something to clarify this, let me make sure you understand where our direction is on this. The 20% restriction on your logo was only that you could have any color you wanted. So if you had a logo that had 3 primary colors, you could have it, but it restricted to 20% of the copy area. If you have a logo that doesn't have the restriction of the primary colors, it can be the entire copy area.
But what if you're Best Buy and you have the yellow background?
And
blue.
And the yellow and blue, precisely. And I didn't download a Best Buy, but I can show Best Buys that don't have yellow and blue. What you find is that many businesses have, they don't like to tell you this, but they have a lot of different options within their corporate. And I understand why everybody wants to be recognized, and we're not being insensitive to that. If we were insensitive to that, you would have seen something that was beige and bronze. We recognize that color is an important aspect. The question is to what extent. And so and again, one of the comments from the sign companies when we met with them was that logos are important to people. They want to see their logo. They've paid someone to design their logo. They want to see the logo. Within the copy area, we said, you know what, we're not going to restrict colors from that 20% of the logo. If the logo doesn't have the color problem, make it the entire sign.
So you can still have the yellow background and a gigantic logo the size of the whole sign, but you just have to tone the yellow down to this yellow instead of that yellow, right?
Correct.
That's what it means. It doesn't limit the size of the logo. But if you want to have if you have 2 primary colors in your logo and you insist on having that for some bizarre reason, and you choose to do that, it can only be 20% of the sign face. If you go, in other words, you're trying to get them to be the right color. If you choose our colors, we're going to incentivize this. But if you choose these colors, you can be as big as you want to be. Is that true?
You can encompass the entire copy area.
Well, and my point, basically, all these corporations have a lot of money tied up into their logo. So, I mean, it's not a bizarre reason that they want to have the yellow because that is their logo. But the other portion of the logo issue is it says it has to be registered by state or federally trademarked. A lot of small businesses, most businesses have a logo, but they haven't gone through the expense of actually trademarking them. So why wouldn't they be allowed to still use their logo even if we stay at the 20%? Why are we infringing on them just because they didn't go that extra mile to trademark it because they might never felt a reason to?
And very simple. It doesn't take much to register it with the state and become official. But what we don't want is somebody changing their logo every other week saying, oh, this is my logo now and I want to put this color up. Oh, this is my logo now and I want to do this. If you've spent the money, and trust me, if you've spent the money to have logo designs, you have it trademarked. because trademarking is very inexpensive compared to what it costs to have a logo designed. And so, and originally, we proposed that it be federally registered, and Attorney Vance recommended to us, said, wait a second, there's another way of doing it that's even less expensive than federally. It's with the state, let's include that also. And that was one of the comments, and so we've included it, and it's a relatively simple dealing with the state, as far as dealing with the state, and not that expensive to register your trademark with the state.
Okay. The next section, page 41, 4E3. Additional signs are allowed on facades located interior to courtyards and shopping malls, and like provided signs, as long as they're not visible from any public property, street right-of-way, sidewalk, etc., interior drive, or parking lot. My only cause there would be, like, say, in the promenade, when you're driving by, you can actually see into the courtyard area, and you'd be able to see their signs. So I would just like to see the interior drive and the parking lot stricken, because you are on the promenade's private property. So.
Don't strike it yet.
No, I'm just looking, reading it.
Okay.
Because that might fall under the situation of somebody in the courtyard may be able to have a sign, but somebody that, because of their location, you can actually get a glimpse in there, and you're going to tell this guy he can't have a sign, but the guy next to him is allowed to have a sign.
I understand what you're saying, and need to think about the ramifications, but
I'm still fine with, if you're out on 41, not being able to see in there, but if you're on the promenade's public property, or, private property, and you're driving by and you just happen to look in there, you see a sign, and according to this, it says it's not allowed.
the big thing that we didn't want to restrict, for instance, the outlet mall. If we were to have one, that they have interior signs that don't meet any of the sign criteria because of the way they're located, we don't want to prohibit them from having that. And so, okay, I understand where you're coming from.
Anything else, Mike?
Yep, and the last section, basically, it was saying the sign color should be related to the fullest extent of the building colors. What if you changed your building color after the fact? Are we going to require them to repaint their sign, or how is that going to work? Or does the sign just become non-conforming with a different color until something happens?
What page, sir?
Oh, this is page 50.
Old 41.
Yeah, this is, let me just make sure, this is in the old 41 portion, and that's the language that's currently there. And we have not proposed any changes in the old 41 corridor. So that's, and one of the reasons is that if you look at the signs, and it's what's already existing, is that ground-mounted signs are not allowed in certain portions of the old 41 corridor, because we allow buildings to be built to the right-of-way. And there's no change here, but when you have where all of your signs will be mounted either perpendicular or on the face of the building, you want the signs to the greatest extent possible to be matching the building. You don't necessarily want to create, purple sign on a pink building with red letters.
What about
Trying to create that
pre-existing non-conforming, though? If they were to change the building color?
And I think that's the reason we had to limit it to the greatest extent possible.
And it says related, it doesn't say matched.
Yeah.
So is that it'd be non-conforming and it'd be staying there, or it needs to be changed immediately?
The freestanding signs in Old 41, all of them are already non-conforming. So I don't know how changing your building color makes it any worse.
Okay, so it would just stay non-conforming
It
then?
would just stay non-conforming.
Okay. And that wraps that up for
That's good.
right now.
Steve?
Yeah, Jay, given the color restrictions that is being proposed, is there any possibility that there might be businesses would not come to Bonita Springs because of that color restriction?
I don't think so. And I say that in realizing that, and I guess the best way to say is the national retailers. Walmart, for instance, and I know people have different opinions about Walmart, but Walmart has blue signs, green signs, white signs, and brown signs. And you can Google Walmart signs and find them in different locations. You can pretty much do that with any of the national retailers. Even Publix has different colors of green. So I don't see it. I think what drives businesses here is the demographics, and that's the population that wants to live here. And this is a great community that attracts people who live here, who have a lot of disposable income, and that attracts a lot of businesses to come here to sell their wares. So I don't see that anything we've done would discourage them, because we're talking about hues now. We're not talking about saying you can't have a red or you can't have a blue. We're talking about muting it a little bit, keeping it more in the character. You know, we talk about some of the colors of downtown.
I understand all that, just.
Old Florida. So, I mean, I don't think that we've done anything that's going to do to prevent that.
Well, I think that the best thing you can do is point to the cities who have done this.
Mhm.
Are they successful? Yeah?
I will tell you in the first.
You don't need to tell me. I know the answer to that. The answer is yes.
I was going to say the first meeting we had at the chamber, and the second, which is much different than the second meeting we had at the chamber. We had a gentleman say, "Well, why don't you like Palm Beach Gardens? They don't allow signs, but like 3 different colors and only a certain size." And because he was from Palm Beach Gardens, and he thought that was a great way to go about it. So there's huge variance on people's opinions, and we've tried to really strike a balance here.
Okay. Any other questions? Before,
Yes.
yes, Bill.
How many businesses will be impacted by these changes?
It depends on how you want to quantify it, but a lot. And the reason is that the majority of the signs on 41 will become non-conforming, because they were built 24 feet tall, 22 feet tall, and so the height is going to make most of those non-conforming. So to say anything other than a lot would be misleading. It's going to be a lot of businesses. The question is how do we bring them into conformity and over what time frame?
And how do we handle the cost to the businesses that are going to have to change? And do you have any numbers or dollars that would be involved to come into conformity, that we would like to keep the businesses here rather than have them leave because of signs?
Ironically, I think this affects more the property owner than the business. And I know that's hard to separate the two, but in most of the areas where you have these signs that are huge and non-conforming, it's the shopping center that owns the sign. And how that affects them is a little bit different than how it affects the individual businesses, because even though there may be a smaller sign and they can't have the little placard out there, the individual businesses now have this opportunity to build a 50% bigger sign on their building. So I think that can be a wash. The dollars, you know, it's sort of like buying a car. If you bought a new car and you have to replace it next week, man, you're kicking yourself because you just lost a ton of money. But if you've had a car for 15 or 20 years, you've got your use out of it, and you got to get a new car, it's not so painful. And signs really are that same thing, because the state of the art of how you advertise and the state of art of how effective signs are, how people find businesses nowadays with GPS and everything else, has changed so much that the need is different, and the approach is different.
Just one more question. How many businesses have contacted community development in reference to this ordinance in the city of Bonita Springs?
Directly contacted, I'm going to say maybe 20. But more than that, because we have reached out to the chamber. I think there was 50 or 60 people at the chamber meeting, and they all had input. The sign contractors were there. We have reached out to the sign contractors, so the sign contractors have reached out to their clients. And so this isn't something that we're doing in a vacuum. And I will say that there's varying response to that, and not all negative. I think there's a lot of people out there that they realize it's going to cost them some money, but the idea of bringing things into conformity and upscaling some locations, I think, is exciting to some of them. On the other hand, there's some people that don't want to spend a nickel. So that response has been quite varied, but fewer than I had thought actually contacted community development.
Thank you, Jay. Ben, go ahead.
Thanks. Mike?
I had one more thing. You brought up the, other communities are successful that have these, but were they successful before they instituted these, or, were they already successful? Did they have better sign ordinances where people came in, businesses was real good, community built up around it, and then they changed the signs to the more boring looking signs? Or, like us, we're still trying to attract businesses here. Are we going to hurt ourselves, are we going to have businesses that say, well, let me look at Estero, or let me, look elsewhere instead of somewhere else? I want to use my logo as is.
That's a rhetorical question, I believe.
But the other thing, you had brought up flags. I forgot what section it was in, but it did address the pennant flags, the little triangular flags. We do have a new marina going up, and we do have other marinas. What if they wanted to put up the nautical cross flagpole, and they typically run the other flags that they have little square ones, pennant ones, that wouldn't be allowed under the design ordinance? Or
It's an interesting question, because right now we're having some code enforcement issues with pennants being used as car flags, what they call car flags, that are mounted to the vehicles. In fact, I was going to talk to you about possibly adding the vehicles as one of the structures in pennants to have removed. I think that's something that if they want, the marinas, if they wanted, that would be a deviation that we could approve as part of their plan development.
okay, I was just asking because you brought up the flagpoles earlier.
Okay. Any other questions before we go to public comment? Okay. Thank you very much, Jay. I'm sure you'll be back up. This time we'll take public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to this matter, please come forward.
Good evening. Jeffrey Satfield, CPH, architecture and engineering firm. And we do represent McDonald's. But really the main reason why we're here tonight is representing Mr. Michael Adams, who is the local business owner and franchisee of your McDonald's here and is in attendance tonight in the audience. We've really had about 4 issues, and I first wanted to state how open and quick to respond staff has been and easy to work with. 2 of those issues, measurement from the crown of the road and the drive-through signage, I think it's worked out. Don't really need to discuss them. The other 2 issues have been touched on tonight already. It's the repair replacement value and the primary color for the background signage. And so if I could add our 2 cents worth on that. I guess first and foremost, I also wanted to remind everyone that when we're talking about businesses, it's easy to identify small local business owners and so forth. But a lot of these larger companies, when you think of companies like McDonald's or Hampton Inn Hotels, a lot of restaurants, hotels, auto repair places, they're local franchisees, they're local business owners. And so each individual is a small business person. So it's not necessarily a large corporate giant and, hey, why can't this company do this or why can't that company do this? If there's a sign change locally here, McDonald's is not paying for that sign. Mr. Michael Adams is paying for that sign. And so it's just a good reminder that a lot of things we think of national retailers, we think of large giants. And these are really a lot of franchisees, a lot of small businesses. So to the 25%, the ordinance has several sections in it that allow for non-conforming signs to be brought into conformance. There is copy area changes that was pointed out. There was time of vacant signage that was pointed out as well. So what we're focused on really is allowing for the business owners to get the value out of the investment that they've put into the sign on the repair replacement. Not proposing to change copy change percentages or any other language that would bring conformity, just the repair replacement. As most of you know, 25% is a small percentage. It does not take a hurricane or a car running into a sign to get 25%. It is a limb from a summer storm. It is vandalism from a BB gun. It is a small amount of damage that will ultimately cause that person to, let's look at it the other way, throw away 75% of the value of their sign. If they've spent $20,000, that's $15,000 that is no longer of use to them. So we would just request consideration again of the repair replacement only to 50%, acknowledging that there's many other portions of the code that will bring non-conforming signs in an expeditious manner, but allow for a larger percentage to allow the value that people have invested for them to gain that value out of it. The second issue, and probably the more controversial issue, is the colors. And again, I guess it goes without saying many times that business owners like things the way they are. Love to keep the ordinance the way it is, no changes whatsoever. But we're not here hammering out every single line item. We understand the goal of the community and the aesthetics, and forgive me if I'm running over. There are several sections in the code, enhanced landscaping, architectural requirements on the signage, that are beautifying the signs itself, matching with the main primary building. So there's a lot of sections in the code there's going to be big changes to the way signs look from what you've got today, from what's on 41 in Fort Myers, from what's anywhere else. There's a lot of stuff in there that's going to change the aesthetics of the signs. And so what we're asking is that in all of that, keep all of that, absolutely. But allow for the compromise to allow business owners to have their brand out there. And many businesses, as part of their brand, do use primary colors as the background. My office is in downtown Fort Myers. And driving down this way on 41, not that we want to look like 41, but there were 45 businesses, not including local businesses, franchise-type businesses, restaurants, hotels, fast food establishments, 45 from downtown Fort Myers to here, separate businesses that use a primary color as their background. And so what we're saying is keep the architectural embellishments, keep the landscaping requirements, but allow for the primary color of this background. The signage that was shown just recently, one of them was SunTrust that had a blue background. It had some landscape around it, had a nice architectural element. It was lowered in height, as the code would say. It wasn't a bad-looking sign, but it would be non-conforming because of the blue background. If council feels strongly on the color, and in particular with the larger size sites, I would just ask for consideration. There is actually a smaller size available to business owners of out parcels. It's limited to only 60 square feet of copy area on each side. We would prefer to have unlimited on all sides for that, but if council doesn't see fit on that, would have recommendations for the reduced square footage, the out parcel sign, the 60 square foot sign, to allow for unlimited use of primary colors in the background of those small signs. Again, 60 square feet, landscaping around it, architectural embellishment, these can still be attractive signs, yet they can still have that brand out there, brand recognition. A lot of these things are driven. Mr. Swing indicated how sensitive this issue is. It's sensitive for a reason. Signage drives sales. We can look at different McDonald's, we can look at different malls, have you. If you've got two exact same businesses side by side and one has got appropriate signage and one is muted, the one with the signage that is appropriate to that brand will have more business than the one next to it. All things else equal, the signage matters. And in particular with these size developments, these smaller out parcel users, 1-2 acre size developments, they're impulse-driven folks. Quick service restaurants. You're driving down the road, you're not really sure what you want, all of a sudden you see a brand that you trust, you pull off. It's easily recognizable. And a lot of times you can look ahead. Am I supposed to be on the left side of the road? Am I supposed to be on the right side of the road? And seeing that color that you recognize and that brand that you trust really matters. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Scott Hertz. I'm here tonight on behalf of Carter Pritchard, Carter Outdoor Advertising. We just want to say thank you. We had an opportunity through the graces of your city manager to work with your staff folks that are here present along with your city attorney. We did have some concerns, and I think Mr. Sweet said it very well. Our concerns were primarily based, I think, on the fact that the ordinance was about 30 years old and there were a number of different sections, and as they made changes, we had some concerns that the ordinance wasn't consistent with itself. There weren't as much, they turned out none of them really to be substantive. I believe all of them have been addressed. I think Ms. Vance brought your attention, there's one sentence that I believe she's correct. I think they agreed that just the way it reads currently isn't what they really wanted it to say. And other than that, we support the changes you're making at this time. Based on that, we really appreciate the opportunity to work with your staff. They were wonderful to work with us, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the input. Thanks a lot. Anyone else this time, please come forward. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Jesse Purdon, District 2. Just one thought, along the lines of what Councilman Gibson was saying. For the folks who've been here for a long time, Heaven Sent Flowers, used as an example. Say on my way home, I decided to grab a bottle of spray paint, put a smiley face on Heaven Sent Flowers. Now we're saying that sign would come down and they wouldn't be able to maintain the sign as is. I don't necessarily know that that's very fair. I would consider potentially putting in something there that would grandfather clause the integrity of the sign so long as the business owner still maintains the property in the business, just as a thought to protect in said scenario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Okay. You guys. Hi.
I'm Susie from Heaven Sent Flowers. And thank you. And the ice cream store also we have for Heaven Shakes. I have 1,000 notes written around here. Bottom line is you were fabulous. I think he's got the idea of who we are and what we do and our situation of who you identify with, what we look like, what our logos are. We've worked really hard. I love my logo, Descending Dove. I'll save you all. The real consideration I'm hoping that you're going to do is stop this for a while, slow down a little bit. It seems like somebody said, how many people have called in? Nobody knows about it. I've talked to many people. They go, "Hi, what are you doing? What's this about? What's going on?" We don't, as a business community, we don't know what this is all about. I think we need a lot of explanation. Things I'm reading in that 54 pages going, wow, what is this? I don't understand it. What are you trying to do? Where are we headed? What's the final verdict of where we're going with this? It's scaring me, and I'm on Old 41. So, I mean, but as a consumer, I understand as we're driving down 41, I'm looking for, Walter Shikani's funeral home. Where am I supposed to turn? Where do I go? What color is it? I've identified where they are. It's really kind of scary. And just slow down. Can we have conversation maybe with chamber people? Can we have committee people meeting? Can we have, and Christine left, so is there any way that we can get some more information, more input from the businesses who don't have a clue that this is going on until afterward? Because I'm a billy goat farmer right now, Ben. I feel like, wow, what's happening? I'm the guy that's, after the fact, you go, whoa. So can we take a little bit of time, rethink this? Does it have to happen in 2 weeks? Are things being really pushed and shoved? Do we have a timeline? And then after we're all non-conforming, they're all non-conforming, and I'm already all non-conforming. What does that mean? Does somebody come in and say, okay, you pay me $250 a day until you get this right? Is there a timeline for all these businesses that have to make all these changes? And how is it going to affect them? And it does affect our bottom line. It really comes down to it's a lot of money we've got set out there and how important that sign is to get my customer into my store, and then what I do to them when I get them in there is another thought. But I've got to get them into the store, and I want to know where they are. Springs Plaza means nothing to tons of people, but I know what's in Springs Plaza and where I want to go and what's in there because of the signs up front, and that's what draws me in. Don't mess with that. Slow down. Let's suggest that, and I would say all businesses are a box of crayons. We're all different colors, we're all different people, we're all different things, I want to be the turquoise blue and you want to be the shiny red, but don't put us all in the same box. We're all our different colors. Don't mess with that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Please come forward. I'm going to wait this time. Seeing none? Oh, she lost me for that one. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Council, what's your pleasure?
I have one quick question before we make
Yes,
a
go
motion.
ahead.
Is the LPA completed on this? I mean, they've
No.
had all their say?
No, and that's in the green sheet. Thank you for bringing that up. The LPA will look at this, in fact, at their next meeting, which is next week on Thursday. I believe it's October 9th. Thank you. One of the things I want to do is, poor Debbie wanted the document, and I said, wait until after the city council meeting so I could make the changes to it. Now, just like businesses tend to want to save money, so do governments. I think that's an efficient use of government money. I would request that you go to a second hearing on October 15th. If we need to continue the ordinance additional amount of time, we can do so.
Okay.
We've done that in the past. Council's pretty aware of that, so.
A lot.
But I think we probably will be able to get most consensus items now, I'm hoping.
Okay, and I'm going to reiterate, and if you would come up here so you can say, yeah, Ben, that's right, hopefully. Or no, you don't know what the heck you're talking about, as usual. And people on 041 are concerned about this stuff, but in fact, the regulations that she may be worried about are in effect right now. Is that
Correct.
true?
Correct.
So,
There's
I mean,
nothing in this that
nothing-
changes anything on
not-
Old 41.
We're messing with other people. Woo! So, not you. We've already messed with you. So, anyway, I just wanted to make that clear, okay? Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
And also-
Yes.
And also that the chamber did have a workshop, so I don't know why there was somewhere where people fell through the cracks on that.
Yeah.
You know, to not know about it. So maybe they need to do another one. I don't know.
Well,
What the answer
and
is
maybe
to that.
the best thing that we can do is, regardless of whether it's council, whether you go down this road or not, I think it's important to send this the second reading because it gets advertised again. It's going to be on the news again. I guess that's why that camera's there. Hey. And the chamber's going to keep doing their job. I've seen Christine send out a couple of things. They've got a little governmental alert thing that they've put out, and they're trying to answer questions. And they're trying to dispel some of the myths that go along with this because there are some of those along there too that what will happen, what will not happen. So, and it will give council a time too to talk to your residents. What's important to them? What do they want? So, I mean, so I would suggest that it be sent to a second reading.
On
and
the premise that it can be continued after the second reading, I'll move that it goes to the second reading.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Wait.
There's a motion on the
I will
floor. Is there a second? There's a second. Discussion.
You're suggesting that we send it to second reading and then,
Yeah.
okay, because I think it's too fast, too quick, and that's
Okay.
my personal opinion, and I think we need to give a lot more time to this as opposed to understanding the cost involved, because I think the most important thing is we should listen to the people that come up to speak, and they were very, very good tonight, and especially Susie, because she was to the point and sort of, I felt what she said, and it's too fast. It's just too fast, because this is a major change in colors, and we have to consider the business community more than ever in this world. And I know that community development's been working on this for some time, and I understand that too, but I really think we should be listening to the businesses, even if we have to have 5 more chamber events or whatever. And I would be inclined to, I don't want to go to second reading because I don't think we should.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the table.
Well,
Sue.
I would also like to see it pushed back further and give more time. The chamber could hold more events and to get with more business people. Because there are quite a few people that when I talk to, they haven't heard about it yet, so.
Okay. Yes, Audrey.
Council, before you make any vote, I would like to go through what changes staff understands. If council wants to give additional changes, I can do it. I will tell you my experience is when staff is working on things and it's not advertised, members of the public do not come in and say, hey, we have these issues. So if we push it back, and we'll be happy to do so, if it's not advertised, the public will say, okay, we'll just worry about it when next time it gets advertised. So I would just make that recommendation or that issue, my experience out there. But if I could go through the changes that we will be making in the document, and then if council has additional changes, and if we can get additional direction, I would love to have that. So I have that for the LPA meeting October 9th.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so in the document, the changes that I see is, we probably will still be working with the color as far as the color definitions, with the color model, and Jay will give me that language. At this point, I have that highlighted as I need to add something. As I mentioned on page 9, I will be adding in the definition of pennant vehicle, because we have had a problem with what they call car flags. And basically at car dealerships, you'll see whether we don't look at the content of what is on the flag, but we are getting physical flags. And I will say that there's one dealership that I went to Trader Joe's today when I was on the Lee County line within the city. The front row had those flags. The minute I went to Collier County, same dealership, no flags. So I would recommend that you be very clear that pennants and vehicles, unless you want car dealers to have those pennants and vehicles. The next change I have is on page 16. It's not a change, but it is something that Jeff Satfield requested, and that was on monument signs, whether or not to make a distinction on large monument signs versus small monument signs, as to, and I believe I had 60 square feet would trigger the background, whether council wants that or not. In other words, it would be, the background having a primary color would only be triggered on signs where there's more than 60 square feet, which is about basically, well, 5 by 10, or 6 by, obviously I don't do math, 6 by 10.
That wasn't authorized by council.
No, that's why I'm asking direction if council wants me to
You're
make
not
that.
going to get it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think I don't think this is going anywhere anyway, so just go keep talking.
Okay. The next change is on 6-7. I will revise to be very clear as to passenger vans on the wrapped vehicles. The next change I had was I'm going to keep political signs. I have it currently deleted. That was my mistake. Council may want to discuss again 6-39. The staff recommendation is the 25%. And that is something council, if you want us to change before the next one. And also, that's where Mr. Satfield also made a split the baby type suggestion of 50% for repair or refurbishment only. My understanding, staff does not recommend that change, but that is something that council may wish to consider.
If it gets to second reading.
If it gets, yeah.
I don't recall us changing anything, but you keep going.
That's okay. Next thing I had was just discussion points on the monument. Then a striking interior was something that was requested by Councilman Gibson. Staff will look at it on page 41. I did have changes to the definition of menu board, per the request of Mr. Satfield, that staff did recommend to go forward, and I mentioned earlier at the meeting, and that was going by each drive-through lane for customers to place orders, as opposed to just talking about drive-through lanes. To make it very clear, if you have more than one lane, you can have more. Councilmember Gibson, I had sign color marked, and that was in the old 41 area. Again, that none of old 41 has changes. And then the request of clarification on the language K by Scott Hertz that staff agreed with in just rewriting the sentence. It's not substantive, but it would clean the sentence up.
Okay. Council, we have a motion, a second, to send to a second reading with the understanding that if we get it to a second reading, well, we can always defer that again to an additional second. Yes.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
All this is going to go to the LPA, correct, before this next meeting?
Right.
All right, all the comments are made here, all the public comments, all the suggestions are going to go in front of the LPA, correct? All right. And just, it was brought to my attention, there's a sort of a lack of definition, Jay. Sometimes you'll use the term through the body that's not defined early in, and sometimes the definitions are a little different. So just take a look at the definitions, if you would, please. Thank you.
Okay. Council, any other discussion before we take roll call? Roll call, please.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
No.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Longcart?
No.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
No.
Okay. So the motion fails. Is there any other motion? And so the meaning of that is that you just stop.
Well, no, I'll make the motion that we bring it up at a later meeting.
In what form? What do you mean bring it up?
Well, to give us more time to get with business owners.
So what's your instructions to staff?
Or are we basically just scrapping the whole thing?
I don't know what you're doing. You tell me.
I thought we wanted to push it back to a later meeting to give more time to
That was
get with
the
business owners.
suggestion of the vote, was if you went to second reading, we would make the changes after meeting with the LPA on October 9th. And then after the second reading, we would potentially, if we still needed more time, continue to time and date certain.
So right now, you are at the first reading. If the second reading fails, it's over. And staff, you can either tell staff, geez, keep working on an ordinance that we didn't send to second reading. And so I'm not sure they'll know what to do unless you want them to keep meeting with the public. If you want them to just stop, they'll just stop. It's up to you.
Mayor?
Yes.
What I would like to do is, I would like to have Ernie's Signs, who's, a neighbor of mine and all that. He has a lot of feelings about this, especially the color and the height of the signs and all that kind of stuff. I'd just like an opportunity for the city staff to meet with him. And I don't want to put this aside, because I understand the aesthetics and all that. But at this point in time, I do believe that we could use some extra time. The chambers thing was about that big. You can barely, and if you could skip through that. So the advertisement for that, I think, was kind of poor. So I think there's some opportunity for chambers to maybe do another one. And, let's give this 3 or 4 months, and that's it. And then we'll bring it up again. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, but the reality is if there's no ordinance in the works, nobody cares. And you will not draw members of the public or members of the business community to an potential ordinance that doesn't exist. And that's okay if that's what you want. That's okay. If you want to leave the sign ordinance the way it is. I don't really see here, I got to tell you, I don't see compelling evidence from this council that you want to change anything. So why put them through this? Why even change anything? I didn't see one thing in there that the majority of this council wants changed. So let's not kid ourselves. If you don't want to change the sign ordinance, say so now, and let's just quit. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't want to waste the public's time. I don't want to waste any time. All right? So if you would like the staff, you want to instruct staff to keep meeting with the public, in a couple of months or 2 or 3 months, you might take it down the road, then we'll leave that at that right there, and that's your instructions. Is that it?
I'd like to make a date certain. I mean, I guess, and if we can't make a date certain, the intent of this was to allow more time, not to do nothing.
Yes, and if council remembers in 2000, I think it was 2009, now I can't remember which time we amended the sign ordinance, I think we ended up taking 9 months. But we did the initial advertisement, we continued it, and we continued it at the request of the sign industry. So staff is flexible, but I will tell you, once you don't have something on the agenda, the public gets quick amnesia. So
council, we just need some instruction to staff. And
Well, I'll say it again. I think we're going off track, and my heart goes out to small businesses, Bill, just like everybody else's does. But in the big picture, the idea is to give them a better base from which to work. So if it's 20 years out that this all gets put together, then it's 20 years out. And if everybody's if protected and they're non-conforming now and we allow them to go back, that's fine. It'll take some time, but let's not lose what we have here. I mean, we have a tremendous amount of staff work going, and I think we're going in the right direction, and it will go slower. If we get the second reading and we say, no, it's not what we want, then they will continue it. But to say that it's 3 or 4, 6 months out, I think we lose the staff's focus. I think we lose the focus of the people who are interested. So I'll make the motion again. I'll move I'll move this to the next reading, and contingent upon the fact that if it's not ready, the LPA hasn't completed their work, then so be it, and we continue it. So that's my motion.
there's a motion. Is there a second?
I will, I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. I'm not sure we can do that or not. I'm not sure we can do that or not, but hold on a second. Wait a minute.
Motion to reconsider, I need another, because.
This is going really well. I have this, all right? Okay.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Again,
Can I make a suggestion?
I'm gonna go ahead and put a sword in this real quick. Right now, we're gonna leave it at this unless you come up with a better motion. The staff has instruction to go ahead and contact the business community and to go ahead and continue to work on this I'll say in an informal manner until such time as that they feel like they have some kind of consensus. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what we're saying.
And Pete, you're wishing for a time certain? Do you want to give them a certain length of time?
60 days.
60 days. You have 60 days to either bring something back or don't. How about that? Is that right?
Is that a motion?
Would that be second reading in 60 days, or what are we doing?
No, that would be a brand new, be the first.
Right, we'll have to
reading,
re-advertise. It's just a couple $1,000s.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make the motion of 60 days.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion to bring it back as a first reading.
I will do permission to advertise because
Thank you
this
very
time
much.
I want you guys to be very
bring
clear
a permission to advertise back in 60 days. That way, if you're not ready, you can stop it then. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Longcor?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh? Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Councilman Slechta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye. Okay, next ordinance.
Hecklers on it. Okay, this is another first reading. This is an ordinance for the city of Bonita Springs, Florida, amending ordinance number 14-18 related to large-scale retail establishments, correcting changes to sections 3-81, 3-262, 3-263, 3-426, 3-427, 3-488, 3-497, 4-1560, and 4-1563 of the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 3 Development Standards, and Chapter 4 Zoning, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, Scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and an effective date. This is the first reading. The second reading will be held on October 15th, 2014, starting at 9 a.m. in these chambers. Alexis Crespo will be providing you with a presentation as to the proposed changes as to large retail. There was something else I wanted to point out.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt right now. We've read this. Let's just go ahead and take a short break here right now, because this is going. I have a feeling this could take a little while. So 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Okay.